It's a secret, but it's an open secret. It's plain to all, but only a few see and understand. Then don't you understand this parable? Then how will you understand any parable? It's a secret, but it's an open secret. It's plain to all, but only a few see and understand. Then Jesus said to them, don't you understand this parable? Then how will you understand any parable?
Understand this parable? Then how will you understand any parables?
It's a secret, but it's an open secret. It's plain to all, but only a few see and understand. Then don't you understand this parable? Then how will you understand any parables? It's a secret, but it's an open secret. It's plain to all, but only a few see and understand. Then Jesus said to them, don't you understand this parable? Then how will you understand any parables?
What up, everybody? Welcome aboard. Welcome aboard the Saturday Cookup stream. Today we're going to be doing something that should have been done a long time ago. Actually, that's not true. It couldn't have been done a long time ago. But in a way, it was done a long time ago. What the hell am I talking about? It's throwbacks. Classics only today, folks. If you're going to send something in, I realize I've got the wrong background. Let me change that real quick. Boom. It's throwbacks. It's Throwbacks Saturday. Today, we are going to be watching this throwback from Paul and Jonathan Pajot. Because it's a classic. I want us to start getting ready for Midwestuary. And because of that, we need to take an old trip down memory lane. And then maybe leading up to the conference, we'll do a little stroll back through the conferences of the past. Because here's the thing, folks. I see a need in TLC. And it's to remember. We need to remember what we've talked about, what we've said. We need to glean some of the important bits from the past. The not so distant past, granted. But we don't need to lose track of our own local, history. As small as it may be. As unimportant as it may be. It might be nice to revisit some videos of the past. And in the meantime, I'll be cooking up a cool beat. So stick around.
An email I said with all the Sam Harris talk, I thought it might be fun if we do a conversation. Both Jonathan and I have been recently doing a lot of videos that have kind of been downstream from this talk. And so, Jonathan, I really appreciate your willingness to have a conversation today.
Yeah, it's great to talk to you again. We're doing this once in a while. It's nice. Yeah, I've really been appreciating your kind of constant really taking it on so intensely, this whole discussion and talking with everybody and looking at everything. So although I don't watch every video, because I do like a video out every single day, which is pretty intense. But once in a while I'll drop in and then I'll try to kind of follow where you are. So it's been fun to do that.
Well, I appreciate it, and I've watched your last two Existence and Santa Claus videos, and that's kind of, it's been interesting to me how we're both kind of chewing on this stuff. And I was thinking this morning, thinking about this, how myself as a pastor, my vocation is to try to communicate God, who cannot be contained by our language, in verbal form. And of course, in Christian theology, the Bible is the Word of God, and this is a special revelation. And I was thinking about your vocation, not just as in Protestant talk, a Christian artist, but an icon carver. And I thought that might be an interesting place to begin because I've heard both of us trying to communicate to an audience within our cultural context that says, well, if God isn't an object, then God isn't. And so I guess I kind of wanted to ask you a question. As an icon carver, how does this work for you? And I saw you, I thought really, I saw you communicating about principalities and powers and using that as an avenue to talk about how God exists, the ontology of God, how God is real. And so I wanted to, pick your brain on this a little bit more. So how, as an icon carver, does this connect with you?
Well, first of all, I think that one of the things that I have, maybe not as an icon, maybe yes as an icon carver or someone who views things in terms of images, is I tend to understand analogy pretty well. I think I tend to see the world with analogies. And so because of that, I can understand, I think, the manner in which God both transcends all representation, but then also fills the entire world with his presence. And so that's been really the double move that I've been trying to get people to see. We see that in the work of Dionysius the Areopagite and also in pretty much all of mystical Christianity, this notion that God is beyond all, all being, all representation, all word, all language, everything. There's no manner in which we can fully encompass God, but that also, and at the same time, and almost in a certain manner, because of that, God fills the entirety of all creation. Feels everything and makes everything coherent and hold together. And so those two realities have to kind of always be held up at the same time, because you get an apophatic move, which is this move of saying you can't represent God. And you see that now in the modern world. You see it all the time. People who say things like we can't represent reality, But their conclusion is that therefore everything is arbitrary, right? All our constructions are arbitrary. All our the way that we organize society, all these things, your values, all of it's all arbitrary because we can't represent reality. And it brings up a certain type of nihilism. I think that for example, existentialism has that problem, and a lot of postmodernism has that problem. But the right move is to do both. Is to say yes, we can't. There's an apophatic move where the world, even the world itself, is beyond our capacity to fully encompass it. God definitely is beyond our capacity to encompass his being, or his overbeing, or his essence. But like at the same time, we can see these sparks of God, the presence of God in everything. And so in terms of art, the theology of the icon is very specific about this, that we cannot represent God. And that's really important. That's one of the things that people tend to not understand about icons, is that we don't represent God. At least we're not supposed to. There are aberrations, like all human activity, there are aberrations which happen. But in the traditional icon, for example, up to, let's say, about the 14th century, you actually don't even see images of God the Father at all in Christian art. We only represent Christ. Even when we represent the creation of the world, even when we represent, the Last Judgment, all these images, it's always Christ that is represented, because the image of God appears through Christ, and then ultimately through man as being the image of God. And so that is the way that we can do that double move, where we say, sometimes they'll represent the divine as just these kind of empty circles at the top of an image, like a very abstract image, or just a hand or something, which it just kind of suggests that there's something beyond, and you can't represent the actual face of God in his essence, or God the Father even. And so it's that double move that is there in that I think preserves the mystery, but then also shows us how the world lays itself out of that mystery.
As I hear you talking on, you mentioned how there is a tendency towards skepticism. There's a deep set skepticism in our current culture. And I both listened to a fair amount of Don Hoffman, and those conversations are very interesting in terms of Don Hoffman coming at this from a Darwinian perspective and a scientific perspective that suggests that our limited capacity to just engage common reality, to just apprehend it. My daughter took in this kitten, this feral kitten, and so I've got this old dog that's almost blind, and so the dog is trying to chase this kitten, and the kitten just jumps up on a chair, and the dog keeps sniffing around and can't find it. And I'm watching this, and I'm thinking about all the YouTubes I'm making, and I'm thinking, in many ways, this is a picture of us, that we have limited capacity. And so when I think about God, in terms of C.S. Lewis writing himself into the story, I think, for example, the burning bush story, where there's a physical representation, it's a miraculous physical representation, but then there's also a verbal representation. And in fact, the name is given, I am what I am, or I will be what I will be. And so, to think that these are the tools God uses with Moses to introduce himself to a people that has forgotten him. Mm-hmm. And I think about Jordan Peterson's use of mythology, and I look at the number of people that are communicating with me and saying things like, I'm not quite sure what God is, but I want to believe in a God, and I want to go down that path of seeking. And I think, isn't this interesting how so many modernistic, rationalistic apologists have been banging on a door a certain way, getting zero results, and this guy whose Christian confession is complicated at best suddenly moves the ball. Mm-hmm. And then I look at, and then of course you came into the picture, and I had seen a number of other people who were showing interest in Christian traditions that were far more symbolic than, let's say, contemporary Protestant apologists, and watching that happen, and thinking this to me, obviously, as a believer and as a pastor, says to me, well, I think this is a movement of God's Spirit. And as a Calvinist, God moves history. We are not in control of history. God moves history, and this is a means by which God is using to do the work he's always done, which is call rebellious people to himself. And it's interesting how have we reached the end of this descriptive phase of our language, and in a sense now, perhaps, as we've exhausted this means, people don't know it consciously, but intuitively begin to imagine, and then suddenly Jordan Peterson appears, who had been talking about this stuff for a long time. Suddenly the man and the moment come together, and bang, off it goes.
Yeah, it definitely seems, it's hard not to see an almost, to use the word providence, in the sense that it seems like Jordan just fell into this place, and he's taking up a space of something that was all building up to happen. And I think that we're watching it unfurl as it happens, and it's pretty impressive to watch. But I think you're right when you talk about this notion of reaching the end of the purely descriptive. The problem which happens, and I think postmodernism plays a role in that as well, to a certain extent, because one of the things that postmodernism was able to show is that the purely descriptive, rationalistic way of looking at the world, it ignores language. It ignores language as if language just doesn't exist. But once you start to see how the structures of language, and also how when you try to apply language to itself, and the same thing happens when you try to now apply the tools of rationality to consciousness, whoa, some weird things start to happen, because all of a sudden you realize that consciousness, even most of like the new atheists, Sam is the one who's kind of standing apart, but I don't think he totally fully understands let's say the ramifications of this move is that they take consciousness for granted. They take the fact that here we are looking at the world for granted, and that's actually not part of the universe. So we're just, this is blind. Like there's no, almost as if there's no looker and there's just this universe. But once you start to notice the looker and then you start to pull out and see the looker looking at the universe, then that's what I've been arguing, is that all of a sudden the hierarchy sets itself up again. It's inevitable because consciousness acts as this fulcrum which creates a hierarchy of attention, a hierarchy of being, a hierarchy of virtue, a hierarchy of value. All these things happen as soon as consciousness re-enters into the picture. And so the science of consciousness and people like Don Hoffman are very fascinating to pay attention to, because even though they might be doing it unwittingly, they're going, I think, to flip things in a certain direction in which we're going to be surprised very soon that it will be possible, and I think it's already possible, to say things like angels and demons without people freaking out and thinking that you're talking about, you know, like multidimensional beings or some kind of basically space aliens. I would think like most modern people think that angels are space aliens, you know, Marvel Comics type, you know, Thor, that's what they think. But if you start to understand this hierarchy of consciousness and how they stack up, then it doesn't become that weird anymore to talk about these things.
We'll talk more about that, because you know, so you know, one of the things that I was pursuing was Sam Harris was talking about his daughter's fascination with superheroes.
Yeah.
And I found that extremely interesting because, as both of you use Santa Claus, I use Mickey Mouse.
Mm-hmm.
Mickey Mouse is real enough to continue to forestall, you know, copyright legislation in the United States, because I mean, Mickey Mouse has an
effect in the world. Yeah,
that's right. And so, but no
he's
one's
working to preserve his own identity. Actually.
Exactly. He doesn't want the Chinese to get a hold of him.
That's right.
And to do to Mickey what they've done for anyway.
Yeah.
So say, you know, because I think when I come to this ontology, part of the conversation, what always stands out to me is, it's in a sense Jordan Peterson talking to the queer folks at the protest and say, well, I kind of wonder about your motivations, because I at heart, what I think, people have an instinctive fear that we are not alone, and so you hear that both in terms of aliens, but the idea that there is a, you know, if a tsunami comes and wipes out a village and everyone says, well, that's just a force of nature, it's impersonal, people seem to be able to accept that better than to say, well, there is a sentient, conscious force, being God in the universe, that willed this to happen. Somehow, when personality gets involved, all of our motivations get redirected. And
Yeah.
so, when you talk about, you know, angels and space aliens, say a little bit more about that in terms of how they work in our imaginary.
Right. Well, yeah, sadly, I don't think right now they work in the right manner. I think that it comes with the same problem of taking consciousness for granted. You know, people are offended at the idea of speaking of God. I mean, like I said, God transcends personhood. That is definite, but personhood is part of God. That is, there is, you know, the notion that God is three persons is extremely important in terms of understanding what a person is. And also, like I said, because we take consciousness for granted, somehow we're bothered by the fact that consciousness exists. It's so funny. People always, you know, people aren't offended by the idea that sometimes you hear people say, like, I believe that God is more, or if there is a God, that he's more like a force, you know, like a kind of impersonal thing. And you think, so why does it bother you? Why does consciousness bother you? Why do you think that intentionality doesn't exist? That it's a freak thing that exists only in human beings for some reason? You know, it's like they're patterns. They're patterns of being, and that's what personalities are, right? They're patterns of being. They're patterns that are coherent, and they're coherent in a way that they manifest a purpose. And so that's intentionality. And within us, we have several little smaller beings. We also have all these personalities inside us that have their own little coherences, not so much sometimes. And so I don't know why that's so weird to think, because we're not that obviously one coherent conscious being, that we are but constituted with all these little consciousnesses. Why is it so weird to think that would scale up? I don't understand why it's weird. And so I that's why for me it's almost like a mystery when I listen to people. It's also, I always think it's just because you don't understand what is consciousness. You don't understand what constitutes a being, how a being is not obvious in terms of scientific analysis, that there really has to be something which pulls it together. And so to me, the once we start to see that, then angels, the idea of angels they're not a big deal anymore. Like they're as and the idea of demons too. I mean, to me, demons are just principalities which are not united in this coherent hierarchy, and that's how the church fathers present them, anyways. You know, so you have some usually it's aligned with a passion, and makes sense because that's what happens in us. You know, you have a person, you have a pattern inside you, you know, and this pattern kind of runs, and it has its own coherence. But what it does, it's pulling you away from your central core. So it's making you, you know, resent something. It's making you hate your children. It's making you like whatever pattern that is there. And you're fighting against it. You're trying to bring it in, and sometimes you can't, and it kind of pulls you. To me, that's just it's a demon. It's a little demon that is pulling you. And if you read like the mystics, they talk about demons that you're full of demons, or that their demons are constantly, either they say you're full of demons, or they'll say things like there are demons riding on you, like you have demons riding on your back, like all these demons that are riding on you. And I think it's just an imagistic way of saying that you have these patterns which are pulling you into death, that are ripping you apart. that are decomposing you, and so you need to bring it together. And so there are cosmic demons in a city. You have certain patterns of behavior. Let's say in a city you'll have a pattern of behavior which is jaywalking. Where everybody jaywalks. I remember there was a story about Giuliani about how everybody in New York was jaywalking, and Giuliani understood that pattern of behavior. It looked like it was a detail, but it was actually manifesting a much deeper reality, which is that there was no social cohesion in New York City. So he said, I'm going to exercise this demon, and once it's exercised, it's actually going to help coagulate the city, bring it together so that it has more cohesion. And so he went after jaywalkers and just gave dick. And at first people were going crazy, like, what is he doing? Why is he attacking jaywalkers? But he kind of understood that we need to exercise these little demons so that the being can now come together. And so that little pattern of behavior, everybody was doing it. It wasn't like people were talking to each other and say, oh, are you jaywalking? Oh, no, are you jaywalking? Yeah, I jaywalk. No, nobody does. It was like this implicit pattern of behavior in the city. I mean, it could be littering, it could be all kinds of things. And once you let it go too far, then it's really hard to bring it back. Like once a civic pattern starts to manifest itself in the city, where it's okay to break people's windows, let's say, all of a sudden it becomes okay to break people's windows. It's really hard to come back from that, and then things can degenerate into chaos. I mean, I lived in cities in Africa where the social fabric had been so destroyed by war and all kinds of crazy events that it was almost impossible to bring it back because everybody had all these little demons were kind of pulling the city into all these directions, and it was nearly impossible to bring it back.
I really like, so one of the things that I've done with trying to figure out Peterson and Harris was I talked about God aspect 1 and God aspect 2, and I think your Giuliani jaywalking example is a terrific example of let's say God aspect 1, and that even Brett Weinstein could say, okay, that use of God I can get into, that use of demon I can live with. I think, and I often, in terms of trying to communicate this concept and calling theology about principalities and powers, I often will talk about those types of things because I think highly secularized people can understand that, accept that. That doesn't make them nervous. The representation of demon also has within it a personal agency thing. And an example of this might be, let's say, and I often use the example of a marriage. A marriage is not a physical thing. I'd say, well, there's a document that says we're married. Well, that's a representation. There's a wedding ring. Well, that's a representation. No one who is actually in a marriage will deny that marriage is illusory. No, marriage is very real. Marriage governs behavior. A marriage has a high degree of ontology that in fact governs generations of persons and deeply forms for good or for ill children. And I mean, and people's life. I mean, marriage is an enormously powerful thing. Marriage can sometimes feel like it has agency. And I think, but we wouldn't say, most of us don't name our marriages. It's just the marriage. Angels and demons have names. Yeah. Implicit in the fallen angel backstory of demons as characters in the Bible. I mean, these are centers of agency. And so when I think about the talk about angels and demons, and especially God, the God aspect number 2 that Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson is going through his axioms, and Sam Harris stops them and says, I want to know about the God who doesn't want me to masturbate. And, a God who has a locus of agency, who also has power, unlike, let's say, the power that your marriage has to shape your behavior. Because I think as we try to represent what a marriage is in our mind, it's something similar to the culture of jaywalking that Giuliani breaks, and the demon of jaywalking that Giuliani uses to exercise a certain degree of chaos from New York City. When I visited New York City in 2006, I had been there since the 80s or the 70s where I grew up. I grew up just outside of it. And it was like, what is this place? Where's all the dirt? Where's the, where did all these young, beautiful white people come from? I mean, this isn't New York City. And so, you can see that in a city, and I thought you represented that well. But there's this other aspect, number 2, which is really the one that I think has the celebrity atheists and that community spooked and reactive to.
Yeah. Well, okay. So I think that once again, the problem arises with, again, the difficulty of understanding being and understanding consciousness. Again, it's the same problem. Let me give you an example within yourself, right? Do you think that those demons, let's say, those little patterns, do you think they don't have agency? Of course they have agency, right? They know what they want, right? They know exactly what they want. And you can, if you're sensitive, if you're a little bit attentive, you can see that you're actually talking to them. That you can talk to your demons, and you make deals with your demons all the time, right? Imagine a smoker, right? So the smoker, what the demon wants is for that person to pretty much chain smoke all the time. That's what the demon wants, right? And so then you make a deal with the demon. You say, okay, I'm gonna smoke, like 3 cigarettes a day, or like whatever amount that you decide that you're gonna smoke. When you're doing that, you're negotiating with your demon, and you know that if you just let it go, if you just let the demon pull you out, like you would be smoking all the time, or if it's drinking or whatever desire, if it's just eating, you could just eat all the time because that's pulling you. But you make a deal. You're like, okay, no, I'm going to negotiate with it. And so I think that it's the same. It's kind of the same thing going up. I think that agency is just a pattern of being. the problem with the manner in which we understand freedom is that we understand freedom as the capacity to do whatever you want, and I think that that's really a misunderstanding of freedom. Freedom is the capacity to act from within your own self and not be fully let's say determined by your outer circumstance. Okay, and so that's what agency is. So that's what I think freedom and agency are. So if that's what freedom and agency are, then you can understand that a pattern has its own energy, like it has its own will and its own thing, and so it has the capacity to act. And then also, because patterns are made of smaller patterns, it also has the capacity to manage those smaller patterns and then to let themselves get pulled in one direction or the other. So there is this, that's kind of what I think agency is. And so to me, the idea that you can pray to like the angel of a city, it's like that's what you're doing when if you write a letter of complaint to the city council. Like, who's the city council, or who's the city? Like, you write a letter of complaint to the city. Like, who are you writing it to? You're not writing it to anybody. You're writing it to the city. So you're actually engaging. You're praying to the city. You're asking the city to do something for you, and it can answer. Does it mean it's going to answer? Might not answer. Might answer in a way you don't like it to answer, but it can answer. And so to me, that's just kind of how it works. And so the idea that you pray to God, or that you pray to other beings, that it either be to the pastor, you pray to the pastor, you ask the pastor to I mean, people use the word prayer in such a special way.
I know.
It's like, it's not, the word pray just means to ask for something. It's not
an English issue, I know, because in Spanish and in Greek and other languages, the words are commonality, but when you say it in English, I just know a lot of Protestants in my head are going ding, 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 ding.
Yeah, exactly. No, you don't, but you do all the time, right? You ask someone to help you change your tire, you ask, so you're constantly praying, and beings answer your prayer. And so to me, the idea that you can pray to higher beings, you can ask for things, is to me is just not a big deal. And just the fact that you can pray to God, to me, is that you can pray, that you can address your prayer to the highest, let's say, I think is not a problem. I do think this is where maybe you will totally disagree with me, but I do think that often, because the word God also is so wide, I think that often when someone prays to God to ask God for some very petty thing, I think usually they're not really praying to God. They're praying to something that's lower. They just don't totally know. It's like so that's maybe the more let's say idea of a Catholic person who would ask some saint to find a parking place for them or something like that. That's really a very kind of petty, very kind of petty low thing. But it doesn't mean that it's not also possible. We don't understand people don't understand, like again, it's always taking consciousness for granted. It's not understanding the manner in which consciousness, which language, which logos participates in how the world lays itself out. It does participate in how the world lays itself out. Whether you know to what extent it does, what's the limit of that, is not that easy to determine, I think. I might be pushing you a little bit too far.
No. I like that. Trust me, you don't. People when they push me think I get upset.
No, I've never seen you get upset.
There's just so many interesting. There's so many interesting things that popped in as you were answering. One of the things is obviously the connection between this experience of freedom that we have, this experience of choice, this experience. I mean, one of the things when going back earlier in the conversation when we were talking about God being beyond being, one of the theological conversations that then crops up is that within, let's say, a distinction between, say, a Christian conception of the world and, let's say, a Hindu conception of the world is, in the Christian conception there is God and not God. I mean, it is the existence of not God that is basically the and that a Hinduistic conception, to the degree that I understand it, lacks.
Yeah.
But what's that?
I was gonna say, but at least in the Orthodox tradition, we do have this notion of the divine energies, which is extremely important in grace. In the Orthodox tradition, this notion of grace is seen as God Himself. That grace is God, and so the grace which underlies the world, which is at the root of all manifestation, are these divine energies. That is, we use the word energies. Obviously, is too bad that we still use that word because it's so ruined. The wills of God are underlying all of phenomena, and they can actually transfigure phenomena, so that eschatologically, right, in the totality of all things, God actually fills all things. So it's not to say that it's not. We usually make the distinction, at least in Orthodox theology, between essence, like the divine essence. We don't share God's divine essence, but we participate in God through participation. We become God through participation, and that's a way to create that absolute separation, like you said, between, let's say, the ultimate, infinite and manifestation. But there's also this eschatological reality, which is that all things are called, ultimately to be transfigured and full of God, and to kind of enter into God and participate in God's I would say being. I use the word being here in the sense that the way that God outpours into everything, but not in His essence. That's kind of the way that it's presented. But I agree that it is different from the kind of emanationist theories that you see in Gnosticism and you see also in Hinduism. And the problem with the emanationist theories is that because they have this notion of emanation, they almost necessarily have to see a diminishing. So they have to see, as you move down, let's say, the hierarchy of manifestation, you have to see it almost as if it becomes evil in itself, right? And so that's why the Gnostics will see the material world as being evil, because of this emanationism. Then it's like the things that are lower on the hierarchy actually have to be evil. Let's say the great innovation or the great let's say realization of Christianity is that this separation between God and creation is what makes everything good. It's what makes everything good in its higher, let's say, in the manner in which it points to God, right? It makes it good. And so you even the humblest thing, that we do not have in Christianity the idea that someone who is poor is cursed by de facto, is somehow lesser, is somehow of less, containing less of that oomph, that kind of ontological oomph. We don't believe that. We believe that all things can participate in God and can be transfigured, no matter where they are on that kind of social hierarchy. And that's a big difference. I think it's a huge difference.
Well, I think that's right. And I don't know, part of the poverty of living in the West has been not an insufficient education in, and I'm sure your Orthodox theology is at least as diverse and broad as the Western tradition. How does hell then function in the system in Orthodoxy?
There are different, obviously there's different theories, there's different ways to look at it. I mean, sometimes hell is definitely represented as a kind of eternal punishment, that kind of manner in which it is. But the most popular, I would say, at least in my circles, at least in the circles of people I read and the people that I engage with, the most popular manner in which we understand hell is that the fire of hell is the fire of Pentecost. Those two fires are the same. And so the hell is the fullness of the presence of God in all things. That's what hell is. The difference is that for those who have opened themselves up, right? For those who have opened themselves up to the grace of God, then that grace becomes transfigures. Whereas for those who have closed themselves off, have attached themselves to their resentments, to their passions, to those things that decompose them, then that fire burns them. I always use the example of how if I do something horrible to you, I do something really, really despicable to you, and I do it with all the spite that I can do it with, and your answer to me is this pure love, just pure, unadulterated love and forgiveness and openness. Now, when I encounter that, I can do two things, right? I can repent and kind of enter into your love and be transformed by it, or I can just close myself off even more, and then that love that you're showing to me becomes, it burns me, right? It's fire,
burning coals,
holes on my head, like St. Paul says. And so that's really the manner in which it's usually talked about. So that this kind of, if you look at the eschatological reality, like a total reality, it represents all that in us right now, even all that in us right now that is resisting to be transformed by grace. It's burned by the presence of God, and that's what burns us. Even our guilt, all that stuff inside us, it's actually God. It's actually the love of God that is burning us. And so that's really the way that it's represented.
And there is in your representation of it there a fairly strong necessity of agency there, because there is a center, there is an agent with choice who's deciding, do I give up? C.S. Lewis, lay down your arms. Do I give up my hostility and my bitterness and my resentment, or do I give that up and open myself up to this love, and therefore accepting and receiving the embrace of this other agent, of this other agent whose will and capacity and resources are far beyond mine, who yet it's even in a sense an expression of his mercy that he allows my agency to exist apart from his own. Mm-hmm. It struck me. So of course, Peterson with the David Fuller conversation, I wanted to know, I don't know if we were discussing at our meetup last night if my characterization of some of what I hear from him as stoicism triggered him a little bit, but I'll have a chance to ask him that sometime. But then he if I'd been listening, I know it's the city of God on the hill, which really made me laugh. Yeah. But his description of that, of maximal responsibility, when I heard that description, I thought much more of something in terms of what you just described. Because at this point, people will often say, well, what kind of a God would seeing him kill me? And when people say that, I think you don't, we could use the consciousness language. You don't really understand what it's like to be in the presence of a being that changes how you look at yourself. We have this in foundational relationships with, let's say, parents or authority figures or people that we wish to emulate and we desire to be like. You turn that all the way up to infinite in the presence of God, and the light and clarity of his being exposes all of our insufficiencies, which then puts us in a place where we now have an existential crisis in terms of our identity and our agency and every aspect of our being. And so when I thought of, okay, you drag that cross up the hill, and now you're forced to face, you're forced to be accountable for all of your use of agency in your life. When I heard that, I thought, well, you're talking judgment day. You're talking standing in the presence of God and all that would mean. And I would think if a good number of people know that that's what awaits them at the top of the hill, they're going to stay in the basement and play video games.
That's hilarious. No, but I think that for sure when Jordan used the term "city of God," I also was surprised because I never heard him use it before. But then when you sent me a text from Maps of Meaning, which talks about the city of God, his description of it. Well, then the description that he talks about, I have seen him talk about it. This notion of the city, which is that is the representation of order, but order in a manner which is also open, or let's say looking out towards chaos and not being completely secluded, but at the same time that is together and looking towards truth and looking towards responsibility, like you talked about. And so, yeah, I think that for sure, there is something, and it's also there is something kind of stoic about that in the manner that one of the things that seems to be missing is the glory, let's say the participation in the glory, and that is something that, at least if you look at the mystical tradition and you look at this transformative tradition of what it means to be Christian, that you're meant to become, to do that, exactly what he said, to take your cross, to bear responsibility. There's all this tradition also, even in there's all these Orthodox stories about how people will take upon themselves even the fault of others. There's all these wild tradition. I was looking at one pretty crazy tradition today about, I forget, it's horrible, I don't remember her name. It was some Russian aristocrat who had heard that one of the priests in her city was having an affair with a prostitute. And so she went straight to his house, into his room, entered the room, took the prostitute, kicked her out of the room, and then got on her knees and says, "Father, I need to confess my sins." I was like, it's like that. That's the city of God. It's like, oh my goodness, it's like she knows exactly what's true, and she goes to the end of it, and then she takes it back on herself and says, and supposedly then the priest totally converted and horrible ways. But you see that St. Francis does that too. There's stories of St. Francis doing that too, where someone asks him, what about this priest who's living with a woman? And he kind of says, I don't even deserve to kiss this man's feet. And he gets on his knees and he kisses the priest's feet. And the priest's like, no, don't do that. You're killing me by doing that. And so there's this crazy transformation. And so I think that there's something really powerful about that. But then I think what's missing is also then this glory that you find in the lives of the saints. This joy, right? This joy that comes, this surprise of joy that kind of comes in and fills the person in kind of indescribable joy, or kind of the Orthodox, they often talk about joyful sadness, like this strange mix of joy, but also an awareness of all the suffering and all the difficulties of the world at the same time. Those two things join together. So I think that's maybe what's missing.
Even if you're, let's take a representation of dragging something up the hill. Somebody might need a last night Sisyphus, of course, because you bring it up the hill and then it goes back down. And that isn't, there is, the reason, with all of Jordan's stuff about mapping meaning and all this, the reason that dragging that cross up the hill gives the experience of meaning is obviously because there's meaning built into the world in which you are acting. And that when you get to the top of the hill, there is joy. There's joy of accomplishment. Peterson himself talks about, the Nazis, making people take sacks back and forth in order to completely destroy meaning. So it's, I also thought, not only was there judgment day at the top of the hill, and a number of people mentioned joy, but, one of the things that I'm planning on, that then sent me to Plato and Augustine, because, a person has a city, and that then brought me back to your principality. In a sense, what Giuliani does by finding jaywalkers is make it the city of Giuliani. But Giuliani, I hate to what Giuliani has done with himself now.
I know. Too bad we have to use him as an example.
Yeah, I had to bring up Giuliani.
He had his moment.
That's right, he had a moment. So here's a question for you. Now, myself as a minister, people listen to me and say, well, Pastor, it's your job to try to make people Christians. Why do you want people to believe in God?
Mm-hmm. Why do I want people to believe in God? It's funny, I don't see it that way. Like, I think that the idea that people don't believe in God, to me, is so kind of irrelevant, because I think that not irrelevant, like, it's kind of horrible that I'm saying that. People will be like, what is he talking about? It's just that I don't know what you mean. I also don't know what you mean when you say that that they believe in God. To me, it has to be more than just believing in God. It has to be an entering onto a path, right? Entering onto a path of life, and that's what that matters, right? What is it that it says even in Scripture that the devil believes, Satan believes in God and he trembles. And so it's not just about believing in God, but really entering on that path. And so I believe that path of coming together, of turning together, of celebrating the right thing, of praising the right thing, of moving towards the right thing. I see it as the solution to our personal problems, to our family problems, to the community's problems. I see it basically as the way in which things will come together and have purpose and meaning, and not be constantly decomposing. And so to me, my whole purpose is to help people see the coherence and the beauty and the power of this path, which is the Christian path. And so it's more to me than just believing in God. And that's why I almost never, I mean, sometimes I do, but I rarely talk about God, because I don't know, it's like, I'd rather kind of try to show you the transformational aspect of Christianity, try to show you how it transforms the world, and hopefully then it'll give you a glimpse of this divine mystery. But it's very difficult for me to talk directly about God. I tend to not want to do that too much. In some of the Q&As, people are always asking me questions about the Trinity. And I'm answering, as I'm answering these questions, there's a little voice in my head saying, shut up, Jonathan, shut up, don't talk about the Trinity. Don't talk about that stuff. It's not, because it doesn't, because a lot of, especially the Trinity, so many of those words have been so ruined. Like they're so ruined. There's a mile, you have to walk a mile before you even get a sense of what they're talking about. There's a lot of stuff, Trinitarian theology, that I trust, because I trust the fathers and I trust the church, but there's a lot of stuff that I don't understand. Like I don't. Okay, so the sun is. Why am I talking about this again? The spirit proceeds, but the sun is engendered, and it's like I don't know. I guess I don't totally. I don't completely. I don't understand it, at least rationally. I can't talk about it. I can talk about a lot of other stuff, but that particular thing, I'd rather, for now at least, kind of stay in the. Let people get there when they get there. And the people that are watching my videos, I think most of the people are kind of coming wide-eyed and now trying to see this, what is going on. And so I'd rather talk about patterns and beauty and how Christ. I talk about Christ. That's basically what I talk about most of the time. Is talk about how Christ brings everything together. And so yeah, that's been. I don't know. I can't totally explain it, but I really struggle to. I think I totally understand when Jordan. That's why I have so much sympathy for Jordan when people ask him, do you believe in God? And he's like, I don't want to answer your question. I don't want to answer that question, because that question is so loaded and it's so perverse that if I answer it, you won't understand it. Because if I just say yes, then you won't know what I'm talking about. And so I'd rather not answer it. I'll talk about all this other stuff. But then secretly, obviously, I keep telling you, it's obvious that Jordan believes in God. He said it in so many ways. He just doesn't want to say it that way, because he knows that, especially the people asking to that, they have ulterior motives. They either want to know if you're on our side, like, are you on our side? Are you one of us? Or are you one of them? Are you one of those guys? He's like, I don't want to play this game. I'm not interested. So I think I'm kind of also avoiding that. That I'd rather just anyways, sorry, enough about that.
No, that was wonderful. That was fascinating. When I was watching your principalities, when you're going through the principalities and powers, which I really appreciated how you lined that up, I was really struck where we're talking about in Judah, in Reuben, in Issachar, and the dominant, the synoptics use kingdom of heaven, John uses eternal life, Paul uses in Christ. Mm-hmm. And you were setting that up with with our internal demons, and I thought that again, pastors, I push back on Jordan Peterson. We are liars, but we're really more thieves, because you were setting that thing up. I'm going to steal that from Jonathan.
Yeah, go for it.
But you didn't, now mentioning, you want them to see Christ. That's interesting, because I was listening to you go through that. Okay, he's just setting us up for in Christ, and it didn't go there.
No.
Why?
Well, that's the thing. I'm revealing my secrets here. That's the thing, is that the whole manner in which I speak, and I think the whole way in which I speak is I want, most of the time, like I want you to kind of say some things, bring you, and then, because the problem with and then let you make that next step, because we've sadly heard the name of. We've heard preachers go at us for too long. Like not you. You're good. But you know what I mean.
All those other bad.
All those other guys. We've heard them. We've come at us for too much. And to just want you to, like, if you believe in the name of Jesus, and all that stuff. And it's come to a point where it doesn't mean anything anymore. It doesn't mean anything. Believe in Jesus and you'll be saved. I don't know what you mean by believe. Not sure what you mean by Jesus. And saved, for sure, I don't know what you're talking about. Okay. So all those things, like, I don't know what you're talking about. And so I'd rather talk about. Bring people into that kind of mystery, and then let them see for themselves where it goes. And so that's why I'm always very careful in the way that I talk about this stuff, because of that. And I think it's been, a lot of it's been ruined. So let's help people understand the words, and slowly. I always tell people, I hope that my hope, and I've said this in my videos before, that my hope is that one day most people will be able to say, "Our Father who is in heaven," and they won't have to explain it anymore. They won't have to say, but for now, you need to understand why we say Father. You need to understand why we say heaven. You need to understand all that stuff. And at some point, I do it. I can say our Father was in heaven and not flinch at all, because I feel like I'm enough in the story that it's fine. But that's my hope, and so that's my hope in Jordan too, is that he sets up this whole story about how, this bottom up structure of how the Father, that we've kind of, all these images of different fathers have come together into this, like, essential image of the Father, and kind of been doing this bottom up thing until we realize that there is this image of the Heavenly Father. It's part of it's built in us, this image. And so now I don't have to say that, all that stuff, you don't have to say that anymore. Just say, our Father who is in heaven, hallowed be your name. Do you see what I'm saying? That's what I want. That's what I want. That's kind of my. That's what I think I need to do is to talk about those things first, and then we'll get there slowly. I mean, already like the stuff about angels and principalities. I've been making these videos for like a year, and I've been wanting to talk about this stuff for a year, and I kept saying, no, it's not yet. Don't talk about this. And then the Don Hoffman stuff started coming out. Like, okay, this is the time coming. Then Jordan and Sam had those discussions. And Sam keeps talking about conscience, so at some point I thought, okay, now's the time, and I can talk about this stuff, because I think people have enough, at least people have been watching my videos, they have enough foundation that they can hear me say these things without thinking that I'm talking about Marvel Comics superheroes who live in other dimensions, and I talk about angels. Because you go to a church, even when I was growing up, people would say stupid things like that. They would say, I think angels are beings in other dimensions. What are you talking about? Other dimensions? My goodness. Science fiction, it's like, because you have Scientology and Mormonism and all these kind of really disturbing materialistic religions, and a lot of Christians, they have that too. They don't, sometimes it's not even conscious, but they think that demons are physical beings somehow, or that angels are physical beings, but they're not. They've never been. No one has ever thought they were. If you read the Fathers, they either say that they're immaterial, or they say that they have subtle bodies. It's like, okay, what does that mean, subtle bodies? Well, I can give you examples of subtle bodies. It's like a story is a subtle body. They're all forms of subtle bodies. A city is a subtle body, but you can't totally contain it. Like it's not completely. So you have different levels of bodies. Anyways, this is becoming a rant.
This is fun. I'm a journalist. I feel like I got a scoop. Jonathan Peugeot and the subtle bodies. But it's interesting to me because from our last conversation, I know a bit about your story in terms of growing up evangelical, and listening to your description of your. I'll just say your evangelist heart, your pastoral heart. That's what I hear you say. You want people to be able to say, "Our Father who is in heaven." And when I hear that, I hear homecoming. I hear being at home in a relationship. Because to say "Our Father," well, that suddenly orients you with God, and it orients you with your neighbor. Because it's not my Father, it's our Father who is in heaven. Hallowed be your name. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Off we go into the prayer. So that really helps me. That helps me on a whole bunch of levels, because for a long time I pester people because I obviously live within a Protestant tradition and in a diverse context where I'll have people coming from lots of different traditions, often African American churches, and they'll just throw out words like saved, and then if I'm in a Sunday school class, I'll usually stop them and I'll ask, well, what do you mean by that? And it becomes very clear they don't have any idea what they're meaning by that, or it's simply code talk for hell avoidance when you die. And then as a pastor, okay, now I'm going to start to poke around at these things and do a little, because I to gently begin to have you, that's what pastors do. So it's very interesting you're not going to sit here and make all these videos. Okay, you've got Patreon, this is open new opportunities for you, but you as well as I, this isn't going to make either of us rich.
I think so.
And so what you are doing is coming out of your heart, and it's coming out of the joy that you found. And this isn't uniquely Christian. I mean, what Sam Harris was doing, I was just listening to you talk. I listened to the first about a half hour of the first Vancouver talk where Peterson and Harris are kind of getting a lay of the land. I mean, Sam Harris very much means well. He wants, when you listen to him, when you listen to his heart's desire, he wants, in his own words, well-being for people. He doesn't want to see people hampered by what he calls superstition. And so he's got a plan for how this can be, and this is the mission that he's pursuing. I have a mission, you have a mission, and it was helpful for me to hear. I thought you were just very transparent. Now, I'm sure you're going to take some shots for a variety of things that you said from certain corners of the church, and I expect that, but you're a big boy, you can take it. But it was helpful for me to hear your heart and to understand, because you very much helped me see you and understand, what's going on with you and what's going on with your videos. And I think if we could probably spend a long time talking about angels and demons. Because I think I'm not quite sure. I haven't quite fully digested where you're going with this and how I feel about it. But it was very, very interesting. I think people will find it quite interesting. So.
Well, I'm happy if people find it interesting. I think for me, ultimately, it's to help. For me, it's ultimately to help people see how beautiful our tradition is, how coherent and beautiful it is, not in a scientific sense, but almost like this powerful, beautiful artwork, like this poem that has laid itself out in the Bible, and then also in the liturgy and in art and in architecture, all these things. Just how beautiful it is and what it points to, obviously. But yeah, I know that most of the people that listen to me, they're not Christian. I'm not talking to most people I'm talking to are not, let's say that person that comes to church and maybe doesn't have a lot of education, that talks about heaven and talks about being saved and going to heaven in a very kind of naive and misunderstood way. It's funny because this is where Sam Harris would really be angry with me. But that person doesn't bother me much. It doesn't really bother me because even though their understanding might be a bit off, might be a bit naive and a bit kind of simplistic and sometimes even offensive, even sometimes they're on the path, and that structure is doing for them what it needs to do. right? It's still doing, even though they don't have the most profound understanding of what these words mean. The pattern that they're on, the path that they're on, is still doing the work that it's doing, and the grace of God is acting in that person's life. So I'm not talking to those people. So who I'm talking to are for people who are usually very intelligent, who have gone to college, who have studied, who have read, who have studied, and so they look at these words and they can't see a more profound meaning. They can't understand how profound these structures are and how deep they are. So those are the people I'm talking to, and I want to help them to see what's going on, so that at their level of intelligence, of knowledge, of study, they can perceive at least what this is about. Because they're not going to go for the when I die I'm going to heaven today. They're just not going to go for it because it's not enough. It's kind of naive and too simplistic. And so they need more. And I think that that's why people are been so attracted to Jordan Peterson, is because they feel like he's giving them more, like he's giving them some meat, something that helps them to understand what is going on in these stories and in our tradition that we've laid aside. And then what that does is it helps also these new atheist types to understand that their vision, their understanding of Christianity is at that level, right? It's like my aunt's who dropped out of school in the 9th grade or whatever. That's at the level that their understanding is. And in a way, I can say that aunt is fine. She's totally fine. But if you think that that's where it stops, then you're the problem. It's not her, because she doesn't have the capacity to understand anymore. And that's totally fine, because human beings have different capacity. And that person can be way more virtuous, way more full of grace and full of trust, in the infinite than you do, even though they don't totally understand these concepts. But I can understand that at your level, you need something that you can hold on to and grip onto to understand what this is talking about. So I think that's been what I'm doing. That's who I'm talking to, and that's why people invite me to do talks at universities. It's always in places where I'm talking to that crowd. So yeah, hopefully it does. Hopefully it has a little effect. I hope.
I know it's having an effect, because I hear that from people who write me and they appreciate what you have to say. And I think of C.S. Lewis's, what it praises inner health made audible. And I think you're doing art, and what you just expressed. There's a joy in you, and you want to share it. What's better than that? I mean, that's the best way to spend a life. You've been given gifts, you've been given joy, and whether you're doing your carving or doing your videos, you're sharing the joy that you have within the frame of reference and within what you've learned in order to share that, and it's attract with a particular audience. So I've been doing most of the interviewing. I don't know if
what happened
I put you kind of on the spot. That's what I like to do. So.
It turned there.
Yeah.
But thanks for that, Paul. I appreciate it. I appreciate your kind words.
Well, I know, and what we're doing on this YouTube is a new thing. And Peterson says this often, and I think he's dead on right. We have no idea what we're doing with this thing. We don't know the ramifications. We don't know where this leads. The opportunities that this has made for each of us are unique. And it is important to ask ourselves why.
I've been really looking forward to this conversation. I sort of think of you, my conversation with you, as launching me into all of this in some ways, so it's your fault. And you probably noticed in a lot of my videos, I make reference to you and make references to criticism and comments that you make and respond to them along the way. So I feel kind of like you've been at least virtually accompanying me along the way. And that's been very good for me and the project. It's been really intense, really busy. Luckily, I'm on sabbatical until January, so I'm gonna have to, cut back on sort of virtual presence come January, at least a bit. But I did get some very good news. My tenure has come through, so.
That's great! Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm gonna officially get my tenure. There's been a lot like that. How about you? I mean, are you through the grueling thing of returning to your home? It sounded horrible every time.
Yeah,
I can see often you're putting sort of a brave face on, like, oh, this is horrible. This is horrible.
No, we're not back. We're probably gonna be back in our house in the summer, like spring, summer, just because there are too many things to do in the house, and we just ran out of time in terms of winter and finding a contractor. That has been crazy, because there's 2,000 houses that need to be repaired, and so just even finding a contractor was really difficult.
Of course.
But it's okay. I'm fine. I feel like I'm back into somewhat of a groove. I'm getting carvings out, and I'm my videos are coming out, and so I feel.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you're doing really good work too. By the way, really good work.
Thanks. Thanks.
Like I said, I often cite you in the series and podcasts and interviews.
I've been thinking a lot about. I feel like a lot of the language that you're bringing, or the connections that you're bringing in terms of in terms of consciousness, and then trying to connect that to religious language and using specific words, I feel has been really useful for me. I find myself using words that you're using or expressions that you're using because it seems like they talk about things in a way that people can understand, because a lot of the problems with religious language is that a lot of the words have been ruined. They've just been completely ruined, and so people don't understand what they're referring to. And it feels like a lot of the words you're using are helping to find another way to talk about things so that people know what's going on. What are we talking about?
Thank you for saying that, because that was that was an explicit goal for me. I phrased it from the very beginning about a conceptual vocabulary and a theoretical grammar, and that's what I would most want to do. Obviously, I'm going to argue for positions because that's the nature of what I'm doing, but that genuinely is secondary to me providing some deep tools by which people can reflect and think and potentially engage in transformative processes. And it's been very gratifying that I've received the same feedback from different religious communities too. So I've received similar feedback from Buddhists. I gave a talk, it's on my channel. I was talking with Hamza Tsatsouras, who's an Islamic intellectual philosopher, and I had a similar response from the Muslim community. So I genuinely think that's great. So I'm hopeful that the series that I'm working on now, putting a lot of work into it, both theoretically and sort of research, empirical, sort of participatory observation. I'm hoping that will also be the case for the next series. So thank you for saying that. That's very important.
Yeah. The concept of relevant realization, I feel, when just saying it is, it can help people understand what is this about.
Yes.
And so I've been using that term a lot, and this idea of optimal grip, and just the idea of finding the balance between two opposites. The way that you're able to create analogies in different spheres about the problem of the problem, for example, of thinking that efficiency is if you're just more efficient, that it's going to work. It's like, no, it's not going to work, because then you're going to miss the other aspect, which is to give yourself flexibility in order to change. And so I think that type of discussion is so useful and can help people understand why a lot of utopias are just not possible. They're actually not possible because you always have to leave the idea of leaving buffers and leaving, when people talk about, let's say, a kind of eugenics or some type of eugenics, you can see that it just even rationally can't, it just reasonably cannot work, because you don't understand some of these marginal characteristics that you think are useless right now. You just don't understand what they can be,
Yeah. I think messing around in our genetics is, I agree with that argument completely. I think the frame problem, all the unknown side effects, and the fact that because of the way genetics operate, they're going to be dynamically self-organizing in ways we can't foresee. I'm deeply suspicious of that. I'm deeply suspicious of all utopias. I make that very clear in the series a lot. Alexander Bard has criticized me for that. It's along the lines, you can't leave the people without a vision, kind of thing. But I'm very wary of utopias precisely because of that kind of concern. They seem to be. It's hard to see them as anything other than hubristic, right? It's hard to see them as anything other than that for the reasons you just articulated.
Yeah, I think that one of the things, so this is, as I kind of discovered your series, at first when we had our discussion, it was great. We were kind of discovering each other, and then watching your series, on the one hand, I was like, this is awesome. And then other things, I was like, oh, sir.
Of course. And part of what I would like to do, I've tried to show that I take responsibility in the deep meaning of the word, of making myself available to respond to people, and to respond to people in good faith and respect, and even with affection. That is what I want to do, and I keep showing that. This is not just empty words. I think it's fair to me to say, I keep exemplifying that is important to me. And I want to give you an opportunity to do that if you wish to take this time to do that. And I trust you. The same way I trust Paul. Paul and I will disagree, but like I say, I often trust Paul and I trust you often more than I trust people that I might share the same metaphysical presuppositions with, because I am convinced that, you've spoken at length at least a couple of times. I've seen you a lot, I've watched you a lot, I see you in interaction with Paul, same thing with Paul. And also now I'm entering conversations with, people that are deeply influenced by you, like JP, and also I'm entering the conversation with Mary. But what I'm trying to say is I trust people who are like yourself and Paul, precisely because I have a conviction that you're coming to this in good faith, and I'm much more interested in that. Like the last the video that you commented on, and I commented on it too. I thought the video that JP and Mary made in response to, I thought that was excellent, and I perhaps like to talk about one of the points they made at the end, because I've been thinking a lot about it, because I thought it was a very, very good point. And they didn't quite craft it into what I would consider a coherent argument, so I'd like to steal in it a bit, try and build it up into a stronger argument, and then discuss it with you at some point, because I found that really interesting. The three of us are going to all talk soon, by the way. But that's when you specifically put up. I wanted to put my hand up. No, it was with Jordan Hall that you did that.
It was the Jordan Hall conversation the whole time. I was like,
it was with Mary and JP that you put the thing up about infinite relevance realization. Yeah. And I wanted to talk to you about that too. So there was two things there. Yeah.
Okay. So maybe we can talk about. We can start. I think maybe we can start to talk about God, because I guess that's the big thing. That's the thing that always keeps coming back up. And so I've been kind of following what you were saying in terms of non-theism, and I understand Buddhism and Taoism in terms of non-theistic religions. I guess my big question is, where do you put mind in your system? Like at what level of reality does it enter into? Because even if you look at these non-theistic religions in practice, when they're actually practiced, there always ends up being a hierarchy of minds that appears in the practice of it. And so even though you can say something like, even Hinduism, ultimately, if you look at kind of Advaita Vedanta Hinduism, like it all moves towards non-being, but then there's a hierarchy of beings that appear right away, right after, let's say, the statement of non-being, and then you have either a hierarchy of bodhisattvas or a hierarchy of gods or whatever. So my question is, how do you, where does it come into your system? And the second question is, if like Christians, let's say monotheists, want to put it up as high as possible. They want to put it up as high as possible. And they do have the idea, like if you look at pronouncements about the divine nature, it always looks like something that is not theistic. Like if you look at the pronunciations of the mystics on divine nature, it always looks at.
And I cite them. I give credit, right? I give credit to saying like some of these ideas, like the term epictesis and others. I attribute it to the Christian mystics. I don't try and steal those ideas. I make it very clear. I make it very clear that those ideas are present there.
But so I guess my point is that even if you, let's say in Trinitarian theology, you say something like the divine nature cannot be spoken of, the divine nature is non-being. You have St. Maximus who talks about God and being and non-being together, something like that. Like this ultimate aporia. But then as soon as there's manifestation, as soon as there's persons, let's say anything specific, anything that you can say even negatively, like then there's mind appears, right? And so that to me is, so I guess like I'm trying to understand like how you, so if you want to not have, let's say, God, like where does it appear in your system? And then also, if you don't want to put it somewhere, like in the system, like then you have the problem of Maya. You have the problem of everything's an illusion. This the notion that the manifestation is always inadequate, like is always verging on nothing, you could say.
Sure. Or nothing in the pejorative sense, nothing
in the pejorative sense.
Yeah. Okay, so that's a really complex question. So I might need to talk for a bit. I mean, the answer is 7. Right? It's not going to be like that, right? So first of all, I want to acknowledge that, and I can strengthen your argument by pointing to the fact that once you get sort of beyond Plotinus, Neoplatonism goes that way too. You see a hierarchy of godlike beings, for example, in Proclus. Is that a general tendency? Sure. So I want to acknowledge that. I'm a little bit hesitant to say that everything does it. Zen Buddhism, I think, is really strict on non-theism sort of all the way, but we can talk about that maybe another time. Let's take it that at least there's a preponderance phenomena that support your claim. I think that's fair. I don't want to offend any Zen Buddhists who might be watching and say, no, we don't make any images and or have any persons. So things like that. So let's turn it over then. There's 2 questions that we have to distinguish, and they interact, but they shouldn't be identified. One might be, and I tried to talk about this, I tried to make a distinction between metaphysical necessity and psychological indispensability. And I hope you accept that I do not treat psychological indispensability as a dismissive.
Midwestuary,
it's not
2025,
a new atheist kind of,
August 22nd through the 24th.
It's much more
in Elmhurst, Illinois. A weekend you won't want to miss, with special guests Cale Zeldin, Paul Vanderklay, Rod Dreher, Elizabeth Oldfield, John Vervaeke, and Jonathan Pajot. Midwestuary 2025, the Fellowship of the Spirit. Stay tuned for more details. Visit us at midwestuary.com for ongoing updates.
All right, folks, I put the link out there. Please feel free to join me on this adventure, this excursion, this fun time on the internet, this virtually not alone. Make me feel virtually not alone. Until then, well, I'm afraid you may have to sit through a little bit of my...
This is a place, and when we see each other, we can start playing together and working together. Those things you call commercials, I don't make those. People who want to play make them. And I don't know what my control over it was, especially that make so.
Gentlemen, this is the elimination course. My calling is to keep men out of the ministry. I consider my test a success when the blood is 4 feet deep and the bodies are floating around the room.
That's amazing.
Now, we're trying to gain people's attention. Before the people were able to commit to a follow, and again, I can't help but watch this and think, things are riding us. Things are riding us. And it's increasingly obvious.
Modernity sort of
lured us into imagining we were in charge, that we were somehow in control, but we're not in control.
You've got a tiny group of people that are just sort of hyper about the blues, and they're learning together, and all of this new stuff sort of bursts forth.
And in Laurel Canyon, you have this tiny little group of people that are sort of working on this, and
then, you know, in some ways, via technology, this stuff just spreads all out
throughout the world. It of course made me think about this little corner, because what doesn't? And it made me think about the little group of people that are just playing with things now.
And I thought Jordan Hall said it very well.
The conversation, you know, is basically as long as the world doesn't find
What's up, everybody?
In our globalized contextuality of 8 billion people, what things we do have in common with people from wherever is often shared media consumption. Shared media consumption. Shared media consumption. Like, I am a leaf on the wind, watch how I fly, speaks to everybody who is as deep into that show as I was. And so though it's like, and to understand what I'm talking about with that, I usually reference the next generation, which is the next generation. So with that, I usually reference the next generation, start.
Enjoy and finally last one. There's no art for the corner. If you're a smart person, if the corner helps you, and then you go and make art, that is not art corner. That is just art you made. If you make art for the corner, it's just called garbage. Just pick it up, put it on your fridge. Your grandma laying it on the fridge. That's not for us. If it's art for the corner, it's art for the garbage. Okay? Art is just art. Period. If the corner teaches you, if it helps you see something more clearly, and then you put that into your art, and then people like the art, great. If you make art that only can be viewed by people in the corner, that's just called garbage, and it belongs in the garbage can. And that's just the way art works, okay? Guess what? I've done a lot of comedy, and most of my comedy goes directly in the garbage. Okay, it's bad, it wasn't good, nobody laughed, my parents didn't even laugh at it, that's it. It goes in the garbage can, it wasn't good. It wasn't secretly great, they did not understand the archetypes I put into it, they did not understand the Petersonian, little thing that I was doing. None of that is true, it was garbage that went in the garbage can, and then you started over. So, you're not gonna make art for the corner, you're never gonna have our own art galleries. This is not how art works. The Broken Clock Tower Discord is gonna clip the hell out of this little rant. It is gonna become branding. Well, yeah. Enough. I'm tired of hearing your excuses. Amen. Yeah. You take the pill, you put it in the peanut butter, you give it to your dog. Enough, folks, we're done. We're done pretending we don't know how to give the pill to the dog. Okay, you know what a union archetype is. Take enough. It's not that complicated. They're nice people. They want to be your friend. Don't scare them off. So, that's definitely one thing I wanted to get of, like, yeah. Well, yeah.
No, well, we don't do that.
All right, folks. Nobody's come to join me quite yet. Nobody. Maybe everybody feeling intimidated by the quality of conversations in those early clips, those throwback clips. In more recent news, 2 funny things happened, in my opinion, pretty recent. Maybe I could draw your attention to. One was Jacob did a hate stream on Strange Theology Pete. Our tough love speech, if you prefer. Whichever one's your flavor. But one of the things that was really funny was he read the part of Proverbs where it was like, speak to a fool, and then it says don't speak to a fool, like back to back, and then he like literally was like, he was reading that and it was like, speak to a fool, blah blah folly, something folly, and then he's like, anyway, this is what I responded to him on X, And it was just like the funniest thing to me in the world. And then something that was also funny happened earlier today. Kale Zeldin live streamed with a buddy of his, a Catholic guy, seemed like a working class guy. He used different terms for himself, Italian guy from Long Island. And at one point he said, if you're not conserving Christian culture, you're not a conservative. And I just thought it was like so funny with his accent, like, and also just like the very like Godfather like mob tendencies, just like if you're just on this ride for the Trump train, I don't consider you my equal. I do not consider you a conservative. You are not. So, but he had a thick accent. It was just very funny. But their conversation was actually very interesting, and I thought good. But anyway, I have a guest now, Phlebas. Welcome aboard, sir.
Hey, McMo.
How are you doing?
Good. I got about 5 minutes. I'm driving home, and then we're going out for supper. So I'm just breaking the ice here.
Appreciate it.
Explaining. I called you the Prophet Nathan, so I was listening to a little thing on Kierkegaard. Maybe you're familiar.
I've heard of him.
And anyways, they were explaining that Kierkegaard uses all these, characters, and they're functioning like the prophet Nathan. They're trying to break an illusion. So Nathan comes to David, and he uses a story to break the illusion that David holds about his sin, right? He says, there's a rich man and he steals the lamb. And so I guess Kierkegaard is sort of also bringing up these characters who have, different faiths, different aspects of faith, I understand, and in some ways shattering illusions in the same way that the prophet Nathan does. So I'm not sure you're doing that, but you're also playing a character and, exposing our absurdist takes and how life is a little bit absurd. So anyways, that's all I was saying. I got to jump off.
We can summon McMo.
I want to talk about which.
What is it? It's all you have to do is say Kierkegaard.
We'll see if he stops in the chat later.
Yep. Kierkegaard gets mentioned. The branding gets played. In the meantime, I am heavily influenced by Kierkegaard. I do not want the mantle of prophet. Thank you very much. I will keep just being a dude on the internet. If you don't mind. But in the meantime, we've got a new friend on, Chris Howard. How are you, sir?
I'm well. How are you?
It looks to me like you got one of those filters that Kale Zeldin has. Well, yeah, you too, Phlebas. Both of you guys look exactly as if you were driving on my stream, which would, of course, be ridiculous and dangerous. So these filters you guys are using are top-notch.
Kale's take on kayfabe, I mean, I'm not sure anybody understands kayfabe anymore. Very disturbed.
Well, enlighten us. Where are we getting it? Where's everybody wrong?
No, I got to jump off or my wife's going to kill me. The main thing is it's a mixture of real and fake to mess with your head so you don't know. Everything becomes real, everything becomes fake, and I gotta go.
Well, what a bleak image to leave us with. I think maybe a less depressing question would be something like, where does the kayfabe happen? Is the kayfabe the show that's going on the stage? Is the kayfabe the narrative? Like Jordan Peterson says that, like, you need a narrative, man. You justify your existence with a narrative, man. Or is that kind of why it's dangerous? Anyway, Chris, you got any thoughts? Oh, I lost Chris. Well, ain't that just the way it is sometimes? You get somebody on they say a lot of interesting things. You're hoping to have a conversation, and they leave. Oh, Chris is back. Chris is back.
Do you hear me?
Yes, sir. I can hear you now.
Oh, cool. All right. Well, how are things with you?
You know, I'm having a pretty good day.
I'm glad to hear that. I heard the other gentleman talking Kierkegaard and all that stuff, and that's like over my head. I don't know that guy, but
Yeah, don't get me started.
Okay.
I've really been enjoying your early morning shows. I didn't catch this morning's, but yeah, I've been able to catch a couple of them, like right when I woke up. It was a good way to kind of start the day, you know, make a cup of coffee and just listen to the Alcohol Anonymous. I usually get there a little late, so I have to catch up on double speed. But
okay.
But it's been fun. You know, having Tayo join you was fun. Having Chad join you, there's a lot of. I enjoyed those videos this week.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you did. I just try to have the light on and the chair out and the door open and see who comes.
Yeah, I mean that's
Yeah.
right. That's you know, we're doing basically doing a similar thing here. You know, sometimes the conversation becomes a little structured, and that can be fun. You know, where we try to stay on a topic and try to answer a question. But I think for the most part, it's just kind of a chill hangout. You know, it's nice to have a place where you can kind of lower the blood pressure a little bit and just relax.
That's true. Yeah.
And it kind of fulfills a lifelong dream of mine of being like a DJ, like Delilah. Because I think, you know, legend has it when I was a young boy, I heard the radio and I thought that the person who was interrupting the music was making all the music. So that must be, you know, it's this very talented person who's, you know, so yeah, that, I mean, you said this week on one of your streams, if I ever wanted to talk AM radio, you could explain everything I needed to know in 15 minutes.
Well, I don't know about that, but I could tell you what I know, which isn't an awful lot, but a little bit. You want to do that?
Well, I don't know. Do you think we should put that internet or that information out on the internet? You know,
it doesn't matter.
We wouldn't want some of these rapscallions in the hive mind to get a hold of public radio. You know, that would be very, very dangerous, especially in the case of some sort of disaster. You know, that would be bad if we knew how to get a hold of the public radio station, FM and AM airwaves. That would be a research problem that could cause or a research project that might cause some eyeballs on us that we don't want, if you catch my drift.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there are laws against such things, so they do try to kind of keep things under control, you know. So.
Well, here's a completely different question. Did you grow up listening to the radio?
Yeah, quite a bit. I mean, yeah, radio and records. You know, I would do my homework when I was in middle school, high school age. I usually had something that was playing, either radio or records or something, but a lot of radio stuff.
I was thinking about this the other day, how long it's been since I listened to a sports event on the radio. Like, I grew up listening to the Braves game like in the car with my mom all the time.
Yeah.
And what was the guy's name who did the announcement for University of Georgia? There was a famous announcer who was still on the radio when I was a child. He was famous for when Herschel Walker was playing in Georgia, and so he was the announcer, and he had this like golden voice or whatever. But yeah, very interesting. I grew up listening to a lot of radio with my parents. A lot of radio, a lot of tapes. Now that I think of it, we spent a lot of time in the car for people who had like a house, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, you probably had the radio on in the car, right? That was the thing.
Yeah.
Jump in the car, turn the radio on.
Going to church, going to sports, going to gymnastics, going to pick up my dad from his second job. Like, even during the summer, a lot of times my mom would take us with her. She kind of worked for herself, doing some different types of things over the years, but usually some sort of investigation into tax records or real estate records. She was basically like a private investigator, but a lot less.
Cool.
It wasn't very like interesting. She basically was like, insurance companies just don't want to. These are like tedious jobs that the insurance companies can kind of contract out, because
Sure.
it just means like going down to the courthouse and like digging through actual
Digging
documents.
through the records. Yeah.
Which I remember being a child seeing a lot of that go digital. Like when I was younger, my mom was having to pull out these big books, right?
Uh-huh.
And then by the time I was like maybe in middle school, it was all on computers.
There's a lot of.
Why did we get talking on that?
I don't know. There's a lot of interesting. What I'm trying to say is we one time we got what they call the title abstract of a house that we own, and it had some like dirt on people. It was like, oh yeah, this guy sued this guy, and these guys sued these people, and these guys were upset about that, and it actually had some kind of interesting stories in there. So.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's a good tactic if Chad the Girl Dad's listening, maybe put this in your back pocket. It was a great job if you wanted your kids to kind of stay in line to periodically see that their parents were like going dumpster diving to make sure somebody was getting, that somebody's address matched up with the records. And, it's that's like, I'm not going to be able to get away with anything.
That's right. Meet my mom. She knows things. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Yeah. And going to the courthouse as a kid will make you. I probably, by the end, I probably got a little too comfortable being in the courthouse because I was just, like in there once or twice a week for a whole summer.
Were you on first name basis with the guy at the entrance scanner or something? I don't know. Did they have entrance scanners there?
I probably was. Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. They had the big metal detector and. Probably when I was younger. I was a little bit more extroverted when I was younger, less afraid of adults. When I started getting a little bit older, I started talking to adults less and kind of being a little more shy with adults. But with other kids, I was like still very, very extroverted. So, but yeah, like, it would be me and my sister. It's weird because I remember being in that courthouse and reading Chronicles of Narnia. So you know how sometimes when you read a book, you can remember where you were when you read it. Especially when I was a kid, I have those memories. But so I remember reading Chronicles of Narnia, just like sitting in a courthouse hallway, just kind of having lawyers and grown-ups and police officers just like walking by me, just basically seeing a kid reading a book.
Yeah.
Two kids in the hallway just reading books. It's like very funny to me thinking back on it.
Yeah, it is kind of a strange way to grow up. Did you see people in handcuffs?
From time to time, yeah.
Okay. Interesting. I don't get to courthouses very much. I was called up for jury duty one time, and that was interesting. And I got to see some of the workings when I was involved with that. But otherwise, I've been blessed with being able to stay out of that kind of situation.
Yeah, I haven't been to a courthouse in years. No,
There you go.
I don't think I've been to the courthouse as like an adult. Maybe since I've been married. Maybe since I got married. Maybe that might have been one of the last times I was in the courthouse. Huh. Yeah, that's probably a good thing.
Yeah, you were talking about real estate records. Now they have a lot of that. You can search it, online, and so
yep,
you can just get on and find out who owns all the property in your neighborhood, or how many houses your friend has, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That's kind of fun, maybe. I don't know. I think it's kind of interesting.
I bet it's different county to county. Like I bet that there's different.
Oh yeah, it is. Yeah, different stuff, and some of them have more depth of records, past history and things like that.
Yeah.
So usually the county will contract that out. There's companies that that manage that data and the online system for you, and then
that sounds like a racket.
Sign up with one or the other. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
I'll look after the server. I'll guard the server.
Yeah, and then they have their user interface. So depending on which company you sign up with, I think you might get a slightly different user interface.
Oh my goodness, just printing money.
And if you're a real estate person, you can sign up for that also, but through companies that let you look at all of them from one place, probably. I don't know. Yeah, everything is online nowadays.
Makes it easier for Doge, I suppose.
Yeah, radio. I suppose, yeah. Radio has that going for it too. If you get into radio station type stuff, then you get involved with the federal government because it's all managed by the FCC. And so there's records of who you are and where you live. And like, if there's laws about station ownership so that one group of people can't own a lot of stations or all the stations in one area or something like that, can't monopolize the media. And so you might have to, if you have a commercial station, you might have to give them the names and addresses of all your principals and board of directors and things like that, so that they know that you're not, coordinating and turning it into monopolizing the information channels. So, and then your name and address will be on a government database. People will be able to find out where you are. I suppose you could get a P.O. box or something. I'm not sure if they allow that or not. They probably do. So, yeah, for my little radio project, it's called Low Power FM, LPFM, which is a little bit different because it's really inexpensive and the rules are easier, but you do have to have like a nonprofit corporation, or there's a few ways you can go about it, but that's kind of the most straightforward way. So I had to start a nonprofit corporation, and then to do that, I had to talk some people into being on my board of directors, and I had to write like a company charter and stuff like that, say what I was going to do. But actually, that was amazingly easy in Mississippi. I think it was $50 and some paperwork to start a nonprofit corporation. So that really wasn't that difficult. And then the LPFM thing, to get on the radio, they only have an open window to apply for that, like every 10 years is what they've been doing. I think they've done it 3 times.
We have a local radio station here. I mean, there's a couple. Oh.
My phone fell down. Yeah, I'm still here.
We have a couple of local radio stations, but my favorite is the one that's kind of funded by the communist bookstores and the queer coffee shops.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And they just have the wildest characters on there, and local, very cool music, and just a huge variety. It's kind of like public television back in the day when you
right.
And it's
they're part of what they call grassroots radio, which is kind of a leftist usage of low power FM radio, and that's kind of moving. The attempt is to try to move people out of pirate radio, because people will just buy a transmitter and do this out of their attic or something, and that's very illegal, and you can get arrested for that. And so by opening up this LPFM thing, they were hoping to kind of bring that activity under the purview of of legitimacy, but then you had to start going by the rules. And if you've been in pirate radio and they find out and you apply for a real station, LPFM station license, then that will be a ding and you probably won't be able to get a license. So
yeah, we do not condone
pirate radio is bad.
We do not condone piracy in any form here on the Midwest Streams.
Yeah. There are still people who do it, and it's likely that you could get away with it to a certain degree depending on where you are, because they pretty much rely on I'm not your lawyer, so I'm not telling you anything that I'm giving you advice in any way. You should always follow the law.
Chris.
Yeah, you should always follow the law. But it seems to me that their enforcement is frequently driven by other stations. Because if you were to pop up with pirate radio in New York City or someplace, you'd be stepping on somebody, and that somebody is trying to make a living, maybe. And if that somebody finds out that you're stepping on their space, then they will call the authorities and have you hauled off. So
yeah, and in this day and age, it's probably just better to start a Twitch stream, you know.
Probably. Yeah, probably.
I will say though, I used to I listened to the radio a lot more when I was washing windows, because we would have company trucks, and so we would, you know, if we were driving in a big group, we would just put on the truck radio, and you know, so everybody had their favorite stations, I suppose, but there was this one host, and I have been tempted to try to play some of his. He's got like this crazy James Earl Jones voice, and he's a complete you know, like leftist, what would be a good term? What are they called? Activist. And, you know, he marches and stuff like that. And, you know, pretty big, or really good resume for that, you know, the arena he finds himself in. But it's been very funny before, because he's such a great radio host too, which is like, he's such a good radio host that like his politics never bothered me whatsoever. I was just delighted to kind of hear him do his thing. He's very likable. And but I heard him a few times accidentally say something he shouldn't have said on the radio, and have to come back like after the break and basically be like, family, I apologize for my language getting a little colorful before that last song, and I apologize.
Yeah. Yeah, the low power FM is kind of in two groups. One is like churches, so there's a lot of religious organizations doing it, and then the other big group is this. Well, churches is the biggest, I think, and then the leftist Prometheus kind of guys. I think they're moderately big, and then I'm not doing it. There's some people who are doing it for other version of those radio stations when you're out on the highway and it says, you know, tune in for traffic information to whatever, that kind of a thing. So there's
you know what it's making
three areas.
It's making me think, because the joke would be we should all, you know, donate to my Ko-Fi and we'll start the TLC FM station across the country and take over through the airwaves, like the let's, you know, return to the airwaves. But that's the joke, because more realistically, and this is an idea I've had before, I don't know if I've ever said it out loud, but the idea of just having like a Twitch channel where it's just it's always live streaming TLC playbacks.
Sure, you could do that. Yeah.
You know, and just a 24-hour Grim Grizz channel. Now that would be incredible, right? Just play me the hits.
Yeah, that would be great. And it is pretty much. Well, I mean, some of them do live stuff. You know, if they have a DJ and stuff, they have a live DJ. Not a lot of people.
Well, we could do that too, but you know, we should get a.
Mostly it's just computerized stuff, so you just download files and play them, put them on your schedule, and away they go.
We could get donations and pass out residuals. You know, I got $1 million ideas, Chris. You know, just I need some more investment in the Ko-Fi.
Okay, I'll work on that. And I am pulling into my driveway, so I'm going to hand it off to your next guest.
My next victim.
You, Chief.
Yeah,
whatever.
Thanks for hanging out.
Go for it. We'll see you later.
Bye. And then there was one. No, Taya, no. I'm not trying to reinvent TLC, 24-hour TLC live stream. This is all about replaying stuff. You know? And then, you know, if we wanted, and cultivating a new fan base, you know, a new have it. Let's create some chaos somewhere else. Let's spread the chaos around. And then if we get lots of great donations, then we can just spread the wealth around too. Why not? Let's get this party started. We've had someone to save me from myself. It's Mr. Joe. Welcome, sir.
What's up?
Not quite yet, Mr. Parker. Dude, what have you been up to? What have you been thinking about?
I was listening to you. Not thinking a whole lot at the moment, unfortunately.
Well, that doesn't make my job as a live stream host very easy now, does it, Joe? But it's okay. I'll rise to the occasion, and we'll figure out something to talk about. Something to talk about. Did you grow up listening to the radio?
I suppose so, like, sort of, yeah. I have, like, some memories listening to the radio. And recently, I had to listen to the radio again because my phone was out of data.
You ever heard of Delilah?
Yeah, that, I believe so.
We need a TLC Delilah. We need just like a very calm, chill. I guess that's Sherry. I guess we already have it. It's Sherry.
That's true.
Sherry, but see, the thing is, the music that Sherry likes is like hardcore electronica, like like strobe light. Like
really?
not just that, but if you think that like, she's up there in that cold white north, just listening to like flutes and lutes, like no, she's like listening to like Skrillex remix of like a jackhammer, like while she's praying to the saints. It's what an interesting person. I love Sherry. Very grateful for Sherry.
Definitely.
Oh,
Sherry's
no.
made me cry a few times listening to her. I'll admit that.
Dan's hamster died. Do hamsters? Yeah, hamsters will be in heaven. No worries. Forget about it. No, Mark. No. Don't get Mark started about music from back in the day.
Here? We should pressure somebody else to get in.
Yeah.
We got this is RJ character. Hop in here, buddy.
Yeah, RJ should come and play. He should come and play. He should get on a live stream more often. He does most of his works in the Discords. And then he likes to be a little force for chaotic good. He likes a little troll in the hive mind. He likes to keep an eye on the goings on. It actually is valuable for me to have RJ around because I've noticed that he listens to a lot of the people that I don't prefer listening to all the time. But I like RJ more than I like those people that I don't like listening to all the time. And so sometimes he can translate, which is nice.
Yes.
RJ's like, talk about Kierkegaard. You come on and talk about Kierkegaard.
I listened to like a couple hours worth of it to see what you were talking about, and I was like, I can get on board with that, but I don't really even remember at this point.
Couple of hours worth of which one?
I don't even know. It was I tried Fear and Trembling, the audiobook, I think, and I couldn't really get into that. And so I like
it's not for everybody. It's kind of for weirdos.
I don't even remember why. Maybe it was just I wasn't into feeling like listening to an audiobook at the moment. That might have just been that, but
all right. Gabriel says at the ice rink they'd play Delilah on the radio for the figure skaters, but then they'd leave it on for our drop-in hockey games. Interesting. Yeah. This next one goes out to Sandy and Patrick. They are high school sweethearts who have been together for 35 years, and they don't hate each other. So here's a song for you guys. And then it's like Hall & Oates, you know. Hello, darkness, my old friend. I have come to talk with you again. It's like a very sad song, you know. Or it's something from like Whitney Houston or, you know, Marvin Gaye. Soft rock. You ever gone down the soft rock rabbit hole?
I don't know about the rabbit hole, but
well, soft rock and yacht rock to me.
Soft rock going on.
Soft rock and yacht rock. That's like there's like a comfortable little pocket with some soft rock and some yacht rock.
I would probably agree. I do like a pretty broad spectrum of music, sort of.
Mark coming at me with the corrections. RJ, just give me a camera so I know it's you for once, and then you can turn it off. Okay, cool. Very good to see you, sir. All right. RJ, what's up, brother?
I make sure you can hear me. Am I coming through?
We got you, sir. We got you.
All right. Okay. Finally, a moment to shine and talk about Kierkegaard.
Yeah, it's your big moment. And actually, even though you didn't come on with sunglasses and a hoodie, which would have made you a lot more cooler, you know that by now. But I still will, because you are a known enjoyer of Kierkegaard. We do need the full branding.
We'll be exploring the philosophy of Søren Kierkegaard.
Let's see if I can summon McMo. Kierkegaard.
Summon McMo.
All you have to do is say Kierkegaard.
Talk about Kierkegaard. So.
Søren Kierkegaard was a brilliant, gloomy, anxiety-ridden, often hilarious Danish 19th century philosopher.
Kierkegaard's philosophy is a reaction to the Hegelian synthesis. What makes Kierkegaard a precursor to existentialism is that he holds the view that there is no criterion for making this decision. In other words, he faces us with the grim, the horrifying reality of criterionless choice. Make a decision. You have no standards upon which to make a decision. Good luck.
Well, we're going to talk a lot about what Kierkegaard means when he's saying that today, but
I really like him. I find him really fascinating. He's certainly one of the funniest, and he has a thoroughly morbid sense of humor. There's so few philosophers with a good sense of humor. Kierkegaard is one of them. So, and you also have a choice about whether you make a decision or not. You must decide. Best of luck. So Kierkegaard leaves us adrift. He cuts us off from our moorings to rationality because he says there is no possible rational decision procedure which could give you grounds for choosing the moral or the aesthetic life. If you want to say that you develop some rational theory which shows you that only the rational life is the good one, you're presupposing what you are trying to prove. If you didn't presuppose that rationality would be our guide, then what would you say?
Thomas Aquinas wouldn't call you virtuous for staying up all night tracking glacial melt in Greenland, but for many philosophers, including Kierkegaard, anxiety is a foundational human experience.
Nothing. The vast silence of human existence becomes very, very clear when Kierkegaard begins to meditate and think deeply about the choices that human beings must, by virtue of the human condition, make.
I'm anxious, and I'm not alone. For example, you guys ever think that some of your friends are only still friends with you because they've been friends with you and actually don't like you, like protect my back, and they talk about why they don't like you and you're with them? You're just thinking like, am I not actually have friends?
Søren Kierkegaard is best known as the father of existentialism.
Is there a mood that expresses the human condition more than any other? For Søren Kierkegaard, that mood is indeed anxiety.
By Søren Kierkegaard.
Søren Kierkegaard was a Danish philosopher, philosopher, poet, social critic, and religious author.
For Søren Kierkegaard, whose Kierkegaard's philosophy is very theistic and more specifically very Christian. So much so that he might well be considered more of a Christian theologian than a philosopher.
But to understand both Pascal and Kierkegaard, we also need to focus on a more concrete issue than the issue of reason. We need to focus on the issue that was the central issue for both Pascal and Kierkegaard, which was Jesus Christ himself. Very few establishment scholars of either Pascal or Kierkegaard today dare to do that. They either ignore or patronize that focus and that center. Thus, they radically misunderstand both of these two philosophers. They were existentialist Christians, not Christian existentialists. For both, Christ was not an adjective but a noun.
So we've got ourselves into a really stupid corner.
Right, that goes without saying with McMo.
So I want to know, what is your favorite pseudonym that he wrote under?
Hold on. Give me a second.
I don't know any of them, so there's that.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. My favorite pseudonym? I don't really have a favorite pseudonym.
That's cool. I don't either, but I bring it up for a reason.
I don't think I have a favorite pseudonym.
But I think he did like a lot of really cool. Ooh, that's a good one. That's the like John the Clement, basically in English, right?
I think it's John Climax. That's what I think of every time.
Because there's been all this, like in other sides of the internet and everything, there's been like issues with anonymity and naming yourself and all this good stuff. And I think Kierkegaard really plays around with that by publishing anonymously. And aside from kind of like the holding the tension of anxiety, there's very much that other side to him, which is kind of poking at what you can do with some of these things. So seems to kind of touch on all sides of the conversation these days, but no one really knows enough about him to talk about him. So
Well,
you just
yeah, I
gotta
mean,
have to teach the people.
the thing about the pseudonymousness is I've heard people say that to varying degrees, it wasn't like the biggest secret in the world that it was him, right? That um, especially by the time that the Corsair started making fun of him, they kind of already knew that he had written those books. Um, that being said, it's interesting because I think that Kierkegaard justifies it to himself as wanting people to think for themselves, basically, to not kind of take the um, I'm going to learn from the great mind above me approach, but to really kind of take ownership and responsibility for themselves thinking through these issues. And one way to do that is to just have it be this person who nobody knows who it is. And so it's not this expert that you can like just bank your whole life on.
I think he does a little bit more than that. He kind of demands that you put yourself in these positions. That's what I liked so much about Fear and Trembling, which is probably where I would suggest people start with him.
RJ, have you not learned that the proper response to someone asking where they should start with Kierkegaard is assessing them as an individual and
Okay,
depending on
fine.
the
Yeah.
life events that have made them who they are and their particular struggles of being the synthesis of the
All right,
infinite
you
and the
know what? I take
finite?
it back. You know what? We should start with having Sherry read Letters of Love
Yeah, yeah.
before he became a permanent sad boy.
I don't really like those that much. Like I like his unless is that the same thing as yeah, Works of Love? Is that what you said?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, those I haven't even finished part 2 of Works of Love, but it's incredible. I think it's not my favorite, but I have very thoroughly enjoyed it. And I feel it's interesting because it kind of, which this might be an interesting question for you, not being Christian, but like there's this sense of Kierkegaard's very helpful if you're the type of person who's already kind of predisposed to wanting to have a personal relationship with God and wanting that to be like a part of your life. I think Kierkegaard can be very helpful. Or if you find yourself in that predicament against your will, he can still be helpful. But yeah, what do you think? I mean, do you get that kind of like devotional aspect from some of his work like I do?
Short answer, no. Long answer, yes. Because I can see what you're saying, but I wouldn't really see Kierkegaard's so heavy that I wouldn't hand it to someone who's trying to trek up that mountain, so to speak. But
Well, they're
like
gonna have to
it's
learn
kind
about
of
it at some point.
that's fair. That's fair. But like weirdly, I feel like Dante and Virgil are like a little bit more palatable for your average Christian in that sense.
Yeah, you're definitely better read than me in the classics, probably in general too. Um, but remind me, are you practicing Orthodox or are you just kind of like culturally Jewish? I can't remember.
Somewhere in between, my friend.
Ah, I see, I see. Yes, yes, yes. I'm
No, but
remembering.
much more closer to like practicing Orthodox than anything else. But I have a better sense of fashion, but not today, obviously.
What are the requirements to like? What would what would it take to get you in a yarmulke, basically? Or do you wear one already?
Mm,
I've never seen the back of your
sometimes I
head.
wear a hat, but like usually it's just like actually going into school.
In the cartoon of you in
Politics.
my mind, you wear a hat like Ash Ketchum, the guy from
Oh,
Pokemon.
dude, I wore that to the gym so much that it's gross, and I'm gonna have to buy a new one.
Yeah,
It's
that's reminding
unfortunate.
me of I went to art school and I really loved the gym because it was small and very rarely crowded at the art school, you know? And but yeah, there was like a type of dude who would come in and he was like you could tell he was like from the farm, but he had just like gotten really good at like playing on a computer. And so he was like an animator or something, you know, like a 3D artist or something. And but he would just be yoked. But it would be funny because like sometimes they would have like gaming tattoos and stuff. So it's just, I remember
Hmm.
that being like a type of guy when I was in college, which is pretty cool.
Oh, they're still out there. I
The
would
like
say they're more
the nerd
popular now than
jock.
ever.
It's like the
Yeah,
nerd jock. Yeah. Those
that's
dudes get
definitely a
ladies
popular
too.
thing.
Those dudes get ladies. They're weird ladies, to be fair, but they do get ladies.
Dude, everyone needs someone. That's
This
the
is
whole
true.
point about Kierkegaard's works of love, and we've come full circle.
Well, the primary thing to me about Kierkegaard's works of love is that it actually Christian love transcends that kind of personal affinity where pretty much every romantic relationship at least has to start, right? Like it's kind of a romantic relationship always kind of starts with that kind of preferential um I found this one person, you know, and it has so much to do with desire um that it kind of that desire is what in a very in Mark Parker like this, it's almost like a Buddhist thing where once that desire gets in there, it's almost like we're flirting with things that are deeper than what we understand because that's desire is like wrapped up in the fruit of in the tree being kind of like pleasing to the eye, right? And so there's all of these things going on at that moment that kind of excludes it from being a type of the type of love that Christians want to talk about when they're using it as a divine name kind of a thing. So like not to like well actually this is something that I'm very interested in, RJ, and maybe you could help me like what do the Jewish people see in Kierkegaard? Like why is there and maybe this I should ask Yosef this too. But like it's very interesting to me that this kind of like a little extreme Protestant existential philosopher would be interesting to the folks who have the answers, you know?
Well, I appreciate the way you phrased that. Well, I'd say it's interesting. I'd say for most of the community, they probably have never heard of him. But for those who like to, read a little bit more or find this stuff interesting, I would say it's interesting, off the bat because of the way he treats Abraham as like the primary subject of his deliberations, and Abraham's like that very moment that he's walking people through, which is, the sacrifice of Isaac, is discussed very similarly in some conservative and reform parts of Judaism.
I
So I
see
would
where you're
say
going.
there's the
And
overlap.
I don't want to make you I'm putting some things together in my head. So and you're not on camera, so you can't nod. But yeah, like one thing that comes to mind is that kind of move from the ethical to the absurd in a Kierkegaardian lens may be the type of thing going on, you know, if the rumors are to be believed that happens in the like Kabbalah stuff that is some people can find displeasurable and kind of leads to why they keep it secret mostly. But so I don't want to like tempt you into talking about something like that that gets you in trouble.
I'm
Um
not 45 and officially allowed to know those secrets, so don't
I
worry.
see. I see. So we're both just amateurs bullshitting here. Great, great,
Yeah.
good to know. What you were saying though did bring to mind. It was like just the image would be very funny of just like a couple of old Jewish guys like on Shabbat just being like, "Have you read this Kierkegaard fella?" You know, like that would just be that's just like so funny to me.
Okay, so here's the really interesting thing about TLC and Kierkegaard, I think, or maybe I should say like personalism and the personalist ontology mode and Kierkegaard and the kind of at the advent of modernism. And I'll also speak like a little bit on like the Jewish experience with all of that, because there was and continues to be a notable Jewish population in Denmark at the time. So it's not like he never ran into a Yid, and I'm sure, and Denmark at the time was a fairly not secular or liberal in the way that we think of it, but just kind of like more open to discourse for a very long time.
And I was about to say, when something came to my mind, which I'm wondering now if I'm remembering it correctly. I don't have the best memory, but to my memory, I don't think he's really ever been that anti-Semitic compared to other Protestants. The
Of the
Protestants that
age,
he's even,
yeah,
yeah,
no, definitely not
yeah.
that bad.
It's not.
I mean,
It's
like
not
his
as bad.
mustache could use some work, but like if that's the trade-off, and his will's a little weak, but again, if that's the trade-off.
Yeah, he was like a sideburns guy, it seems.
Oh, dude, mutton chops for days.
Yeah, that was like considered he
When
honestly, I think he was like
you
a weird dude, to be honest. I bet he wouldn't like me that much.
Okay, so this is like what I'm trying to get to is that they offer these, really, at least they used to. You could probably get in touch with the right people and go on a Kierkegaard tour. Like still like a lot of like the apartments. One of the apartments that he used to live in is now a bar, which is
My
not a
Protestant
bad
birthright.
place.
Protestant
Yeah, pretty
birthright.
much. It's a pilgrimage. It's a Kierkegaard pilgrimage. Only takes about like an hour and a half, but it's actually really, really cool. I got to do it with a professor who was, studying over from America. So he was like not in, and it was just a good experience. But you get to understand kind of like, okay, you're trapped inside at night, and you're writing all these things, and you're thinking a little bit too much, and this is what comes out is like a side of Kierkegaard that people kind of underestimate, I think. And like that's what I refer to as kind of his like sad boy era at the end of it all. But I think it kind of shows that like you do, and that's why I phrased it earlier, is that Kierkegaard kind of shows that you do need other people through this whole thing. So I think that's my 2 cents for the day before I go back to doing schoolwork.
Yeah, that's a very interesting take. That like, because I often get tired of hearing just people discuss Kierkegaard as a person and not when I feel like a lot of times, because they lack the religious dimension, they just completely misunderstand his ideas. And so but I like that take of thinking of like maybe his life points to one of his main deficits, which I agree with you is his kind of solitude, which I wonder would be like slightly different than like life as an individual. And honestly, like a lot of his writing kind of betrays himself too. Like you see a lot of times him writing above where he could probably like live out. But that needs to be done, from time to time. Like we shouldn't let our own holiness be the limit of our imagination for what holiness could look like. And I like, again, you make a great point. Like I don't even think, and maybe this is a Trinitarian point, but I don't even think that like holiness necessarily could stand by itself as a singular unity that didn't have kind of something else to make its definition make sense or its self-reference make sense. But anyway, I'm getting a little bit into choppy waters myself, so we don't want to make this too much of a heretics confessional.
References are tight, man. Joe, what do you think of Danish sad people and their Protestantism from the 1800s? Like today or not like today?
I'll say like today, but I don't really know what you're talking about. But I remember I like the part about knights where Kierkegaard was talking about knights.
Yeah,
I don't even really remember the details.
The Knights of Faith and the Knights of Resignation.
Yes, that was
yeah.
good.
I mean, that's an interesting thing, and I think I would have assumed, and I probably did when I first read it, because I didn't really know very many Jewish people at the time. I had a coworker for a little while who was a young Jewish man, and so that was a learning experience a little bit. But just in the sense of like it was just very interesting. Most people I interact with I think of as like learning experiences because it's just fun to learn about people. But I basically at that time would have considered that Jewish people would have just primarily fallen under that like ethical sphere of doing the right thing, or that night of infinite resignation that just kind of keeps the law because they feel like they have to, even though they've given up on their dreams of like utopia, basically, or their dreams of God fulfilling his promises in their lifetime. In other words, that they lack faith. But then coming into contact with some of you Jews, it's been great. You know, like, I don't see that same, like my suspicions, which I'm sure like, you know, people are people. And so I'm sure that there are like Orthodox Jews who don't necessarily, who like an existential view on things, or the idea of like faith might not be the most compelling thing in their life or whatever. They might, I'm sure that there are nights of infinite resignation within Jewish communities, but I'm also sure that there are nights of faith, like Abraham, obviously. So yeah, it's very, very interesting. Did you say you had to go, RJ?
Yeah, I do have to run. Not all the hours in the day left on my side. So
well, thanks for
I
hanging
will
out,
bid
bud.
you guys a good cook-up.
Yeah, thanks, man. That was awesome.
Yeah, you might hear yourself on the beat at the end. So we'll see how that goes. But you know, and we've been doing this for 2 hours now, so maybe I'll put the link in there one more time if anybody wants to keep the conversation going. I can probably stay as long as I don't get super tired and my wife doesn't text me and say that she's done with work. So, which might be as good a reason as any to go ahead and bounce what I've got on the beat, which we can listen to later. But yeah, what did you make of the two nights, like the night of infinite resignation versus the night of faith? Like, if you had to put it in your own words, what do you think like the difference he was trying to get at was?
I honestly don't remember. I'd have to like listen to whatever I listened to again. But I recall that that like I liked the Night of Faith more, or that made more sense to me. And I don't remember the difference. I guess yeah, I would just be guessing, so
yeah, I mean, it's been a while since I've like listened to that full book again. One of the things that just always pops up into my mind, just randomly, is the part where he's talking about Isaac weaning, because it's just like so weird, like how like all the different ways, and it's kind of like it's like very psychological, right? Like it's how you're like, he like basically takes how your parents wean you and makes a like psychological statements about what that could mean like in the rest of your life, kind of a thing, which I just thought was like very, very interesting. But it has to do with that idea of like us not getting what we want, right? Like how do you go from having this very like natural source of food, and now suddenly that gets taken away and you have to like depend on, like, you just have to eat this other food that's like not straight from your mom. Like that's just probably really hard for kids, you know? Yeah, Tayo says, is the Night of Fate the one that can dunk from the free throw line? Yeah, that's him, brother.
I guess, yeah.
And if you want to be able to dunk from the free throw line, donate to my Ko-Fi, which I'm going to put in the comments, because I feel like we've been virtually not alone today. So I don't feel that shameful in that, and just, putting out the word like, hey, if you want me to quit my day job so that I can just run a 24-hour a day radio station of this type of content, we got the music with the beats, we got the the talk shows. We could get some syndication. You know, we could cut some deals on the back end. We could really get this thing going, and all we need to get started is a little bit of capital investment from our biggest fans, straight to my Ko-fi link. And that way, I can get rich and distribute the funds. You know, in a very, it's trickle down economics, right? So once my basins get full, that's when the money will start trickling down to all these other, you know, causes that people have started, you know, putting on the Ko-fi. You know, somebody put in the Ko-fi the other day, and what was weird, it wasn't that big of a donation. I don't want to out who did it, Phoebus, but he put a donation, and it was under a pseudonym, so if you try to find it, you're not going to know, but I know through back channels that it was Phoebus. But he basically said, he gave me $5 and said to end world hunger. And I just thought to myself, well, Phoebus, how are we supposed to end world hunger with a donation that low? You know, we can't even get $10 to end world hunger. What am I supposed to do with that, Phoebus? I can't even afford to talk to somebody who might have ideas about ending world hunger for that much money. If all I have is $5, I'm one of the people hungry. You're causing world hunger, Phoebus, with donations that low. Come on, man.
Yeah, and leaving us hanging, he hopped in and said something and then just left like that.
No, I there's a world in which I would die a happy man if I could just be like neighbors with Phoebus. I just think that would be so fun and funny. Like, he's the type of dude that I would want my kids to like interact with. You know, and be like, go hang out with Uncle Phoebus, get straight, come back, maybe speak to your mother with a little bit more respect. You know, I'm probably going to be a very disciplinarian parent. I think I'm going to I definitely want to I don't want to err on the side of sparing the rod and spoiling the child. You know, I want to err on the side of keeping him in check, you know, and I'm not talking about physical stuff. I'm mostly talking about mental manipulation and mind control. I'm going to make special branding for them at a very early age, get them donating to my Ko-fi. And then after that, that's when I start subtly manipulating them into doing the things I want. You know, and it's like, do you see Daddy crying on chill streams? No. Then you need to get it together. And all of that to say, sometimes you got to LARP and you got to LARP hard.
LARP! We have the ability to LARP and LARP hard.
Riff harder. Riff harder. Riff harder.
LARP! We have the ability to LARP and LARP hard.
Riff harder.
That was a McMo one, I think. I believe that was a McMo masterpiece. I think that was his style.
You and I can make a difference in our children's future. Overpopulation is linked to pollution, overcrowding, health problems, and poor living conditions. Too many children can mean economic and emotional hardship. Our population is growing at an alarming rate. In the next 30 seconds, 90 more people will fill the earth. We need to make a change. Planning our families can make a difference. Think about how many children you want to love and support. Respect friends in their decision to have 0, 1, or 2 kids. Adoption is another option. Let's make this a cleaner, healthier world for our kids. Please think about how many children you want to bring into this world.
Yeah. Just think about having only 2 or 3 or maybe just 4. Like, if you could keep it to around 4, that would really help out, you know. You don't need to worry about having like 12 kids. If you could keep it to 4 so that we could keep the populations manageable by those who are, thankfully serving us in the higher echelons of, the power centers of the world, I suppose.
True.
But yeah, when I have kids, I'll probably try to keep it to like 3 or 4 myself. I don't want to get too big either. Not too big for my britches. But depending on what my wife says too, she's ultimately in charge as the love of my life. 'Cause yeah, maybe we have one and she's just like, that's enough. And I'll be like, yes, ma'am. See, Gabriel's being very considerate to the planet and only having 4 children. That's very good for us. Go Gabriel. The idea of Gabriel drawing his like family chart, and it's just like this very like high fractal thing where it's got like, yes, I'm my father's son's brother, but I'm not my brother's son's dad. It's like one of his very intricate fractal, and it's just got like family, sibling, and the people in his family just like interacting. That's just like very funny to me. Let's see. Dan says, I'm starting a carbon debits business. I'll take pot shots at the ozone layer for a fee and have more kids. Yeah, if you want Dan to have more kids or Gabriel to have more kids, donate to my Ko-Fi. Hey, is it Gabriel's birthday? Happy birthday, Gabriel. What a special occasion to accompany us on McMo stream. Very cool.
Yeah, you could hop in if you're not being assaulted by a child at the moment.
I think the thing about it is, though, is like I'm very grateful that someone on their birthday would come want to chill. That it's just that when he was thinking to himself, what's the kind of thing I want to do on my birthday? That he was like, oh, I'll watch a McMo stream. That's pretty cool. Heyo. One more. Yeah, but just, keep it to 5, right? Like, you don't want to have like 12 kids. Every time there's 12 kids in the Bible, the youngest one gets a little too big for his britches, gets cast out, cast away, and 12 seems a little unmanageable. And apparently it's not Gabriel's birthday. But
that's the liar.
Tayo. See, my dog's not a big fan of people who are duplicitous. So that's why he keeps barking, because he can sense that Tayo in the comments. Though he's probably just like congratulating Stucky on his 4 kids. But yeah, he's basically lying to us. Uh-oh. We've got a legend here. And because of the shades, we get the solo layout Yon God, and forgive me, I need to remove the virtually not alone bubble. How are you, sir? Did you get a haircut?
Unless it all fell out. I'm just here because Joe had that nice invitation, so I'm just gonna stop by.
It's been a wig this entire time,
because
folks.
I want to respect Joe.
Us.
Awesome,
Wig,
man. Oh, you're easy to convince. All I had to say was today is tomorrow. So that was easy.
Life is short. Life is
It's
short.
true, man.
And, if the end is coming, we might as well have some fun. So, have a nice stream.
Hey, praise
and
God,
maybe
brother.
I'll
Praise
see you
God.
tomorrow, okay?
Sweet, man. Thanks for hopping on.
What a legend. What a legend. Just coming on, giving us that Neo look, The fact that it's been a wig this whole time.
I did think he had hair, so yeah. I had no idea.
Makes one want to pause and think about things, assess situations.
What is real? Do I have a hat?
The idea that if
what a group of witches is called a coven.
A group of Christians is called a church. The idea is sort of simultaneous prayer causes change. Now, there's different words. Some people call the prayer spells. Some people call the prayer a pep rally. Go! You look at the football game. You're seeing covens of witches cheering this direct energy of the team they want to try to move the needle a little bit. But when you consider the power of directing little bubble universes, which is every single human, focusing that beam of attention onto certain ideas, dude, you're not only are you going to create whatever it is you want to create in the case of an advertiser, make some money, but theoretically you could guide history
that way. And the last thing you want them to figure out,
man, the film was supposed to be smoking in space.
Focusing on what you're telling them.
But that's how easy it is to do a retcon in the film, or a product placement in the film with some bullshit like smoking in space. Very good. But the beats, we should probably learn the beats and teach the beats as part of what we're the bullshit like smoking in space. Very good. But the beats, we should probably learn the beats and teach the beats as part of what we're learning, if that's what the bullshit like smoking in space. Very good. But the beats, we should probably learn the beats and teach the beats as part of what we're learning, if that's what they use to program people's mind holes. Welcome, everybody. The beats, we should probably learn the beats and teach the beats as part of what we're learning, if that's what they use to program people's mind holes.
That's something Grim Grizz has been trying to get people to sign up to play a Monster Party, and I didn't sign up yet either, but I'm down to play like tonight. So maybe we can make that happen if some other people want to play.
Well, where would one sign up?
He said he wanted to do it before Sunday, and so it is before Sunday.
Tonight? Is it tonight? Will tonight to be the night that I will fall for Grim? Is tonight the night that I will join the Monster Bash?
That could work, man. You can make a whole song.
Yeah, it's really... I think we should be grateful for the level of participation that we get sometimes. And...
It's true.
I don't know. Also, I know that a lot of people in the corner like Dungeons and Dragons or whatever, D&D. And it can be very, very fun. And I like watching, I like participate. This is the thing. It's way more fun to participate in the Monster Bash than it is to watch them later. And so really, you do kind of want to, you got to be there. Mm-hmm. And so, but what can the general do with that? He needs the volunteers. They need to know how to play. Like, they need to use the software. Like, and then they also like, it's better if they're like super funny and cool and interesting, which most of them are usually.
He did figure out how to incorporate the chat and stuff, but it just like
with the bonuses.
It depends like how many people are actually doing it, and like it changes the hit points and stuff, so it's hard to predict, and so that's probably part of the problem, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and then the one thing is like maybe he could just do them more regularly, and then people would know like when kind of they would happen.
Well, this time he gave us like a whole week to sign up, and I don't think anybody did. I guess I could check, but I mean, I didn't even, so.
Nobody signed up.
Yeah, but I'm asking people right now. So if
well, where do they go?
Well, the Discord on the porch is where he left the sign up thing.
Ah, the Broken Clock Tower Discord.
Yes. So
which
you could
here's a thought I had. I could maybe start my own Discord, and then sometimes in there I could probably like host private DJ sets where I play not just McMo music, but fun music that I've been listening to. And we could just hang out. We could do watch parties, stuff like that. That could be fun.
It could be just more spread out, though. You could also just get like another voice chat room in Grimm's too, possibly.
True. Maybe I don't need to start my own thing. maybe one of our generous captains will let me host the party on their ship. That could be fun.
Potential. I'm Discord-tarded.
That's unfortunate.
Discord is pretty complicated. I've never used it before, but I mean, if you just don't get caught up in all the awesome tabs and just pick a few and turn all the notifications off.
Yeah. My Discord will not be about the written word. Maybe you post links or music or stuff like that, but stuff that makes me giggle. But clips for us to use on the stream, which I kind of already do that with the clip stream channel in the Discord. So yeah, maybe I do just kind of maybe the grim general will allow me to maybe be like a lieutenant or something, or like a sergeant.
It's not hard to hop between the different servers either, so I mean,
no, it's true.
Wouldn't be a big problem either, I don't think.
Yeah, we could do memes. You could leave me voice messages of you like pooping. Dang it. I uploaded. Shoot. I hate when that happens. I bounced the wrong file type. And so because of that, I have to re-bounce it, which will take some time. But luckily, I got nothing better to do, so.
Let's who we got? We got Dan. Dan said something about spiciness in Friday's live stream. You could tell us about that.
Oh yeah, what was the spicy stream you were talking about? You're talking about PVKs, Vandies?
I think so. Yeah, I was watching, but I don't necessarily remember what was spicy. There was some interesting things happening, but chat was a little spicy. Yeah,
lots of people seem to see Bethel, and I think it's pronounced Bethel and not Bethel, or maybe that's like a joke that is being played on me. But I've learned that a lot of people find her like pretty trolly or something. That they like they tend to disagree with her a lot or something. But so maybe there's something to that. Oh, it looks like Gabriel's joined us. Gabriel? Oh. Uh-oh. Oh my goodness. We got to full screen this. This is a double. My dog even can tell that this is crazy.
Hey, you.
Wow. Look at those cool kids. What's up, cool dudes?
Yeah, that's you.
Oh my
Can't
goodness.
stay long, but we thought we'd pop in and say hi.
Thank you for hopping on. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That might be the youngest person we've ever had on the stream with sunglasses on. That is very cool. Yeah.
He figured out the other day that he could see himself on the screen. He ran in the room when I was talking. I think I was talking to Jacob or something. I forget who it was. And he ran in the room. It's like, is that me up there?
Yeah. Does he have any views on like the whole Jordan Peterson phenomena?
Not that I've heard so far. He's not particularly good at cleaning his room at this point. So
I see.
We're still working on that.
Sounds
He'll
like
pick up some things.
Must have been a Biden voter. Must have been a yeah.
Yeah, if he was, he didn't admit it.
Yeah, lots of people telling him to clean his room. Like that's you got to clean your room, little man, bucko.
Yeah, I'm gonna rebel.
Well, thanks for hopping on, dude. This is something I was thinking about with kids, is like, or something I think about a lot, but is like curating a playlist of videos for them, or music playlists, or just like books, and just kind of that curation. Like, there's an element of when you're a parent, you can really like just give your kid the classics and the best, And I wonder, like, to what extent you think about that, and like, what content do your kids take in? You know, like, what do you guys have any go-to, like, DVDs, or are they iPad kids, or what? You know, how have you guys navigated those waters?
Yeah, we don't really do screens much, but we'll hop onto YouTube and watch. We do a lot of sort of creative things. I like to make stuff, so we'll watch people making crazy motorcycles or cars or boats, or we'll watch a bunch of science stuff and things like that. So it's mostly creative and learning primarily. We don't really do the iPad.
Yeah.
My daughter was doing iPad learning for a while, and it got to be an issue, especially because this one liked to watch her do her iPad stuff, and then when she was done, he would throw a fit. So it's like, we're switching to workbooks. So we found a place nearby where you can buy those homeschool workbooks, and that's what they've been doing primarily. My oldest one's good with the laptop. He's been learning some coding stuff and doing his math and science on there. But yeah, as far as curating, I have thought about that long term. Mostly, we've been reading the C.S. Lewis series, the Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe. I've been reading it with the boys, and we've been going through the Wing Feather saga. I don't know if y'all have heard about that, but it's pretty good.
I don't know that one.
Yeah, we've been enjoying that one as well. And my
Wing Feather saga.
Yeah. And then my 5-year-old 6-year-old now, started reading The Hobbit. I think it's a little over his head, but he seems to be enjoying it. So we've got books like that floating around. And that's one of our things. If we go out, there's a Barnes and Noble that's still at the mall near us, and we'll go over there and they can pick something out. So we're a book family. We try to be a book family, and lots of Legos, lots of toys, lots of drawing, painting, building. Like if you could see my work bench here, it's all just markers and pencils and scissors and tools, and I've got toolboxes under my bench here, and so that's just the kind of house it is around here. So
that's very cool.
But yeah, I need to be better about music stuff. We listen to a lot of like sea shanties and like the sort of modern country Coulter Wall style stuff that's going on. And then my wife, she was a 90s kid, so she'll have a lot of the more contemporary stuff, because I don't want them to not know it, but at least our classics, mom and dad's classics. So I try to be pretty mindful about that, but I also don't want to control it as well. I don't want them to ever feel like they can't explore things for themselves. It's like, this is what mom and dad likes. This is what we listen to. This is what we sing together. But this is something that interests me personally, so I'm allowed to listen to it within reason, of course. But
yeah, it's funny to me. I have a couple of friends who have kids, and they love heavy metal music, but they mostly I think some of them have made the switch to like Christian heavy metal music, just so they don't have to worry about like the kid repeating like horrible stuff, Yeah. But it's just very funny to me. Like, they've got these little rock star kids who are just like, like headbanging and doing that kind of thing, which is pretty funny.
Yeah.
I've got some friends who they recently moved, but they lived in California, and their two little kids were like just complete California surfer dude kids. Like, it was just very funny seeing these little kids grow up on the West Coast, and their like hair was blonder than their parents, and like, just even as a little kid, you could just tell in their personalities it was like much more chill.
Yeah. No, I haven't introduced them to my metal collection. Some of it you can't understand the words, so I'll probably start with something like that.
Yeah.
Like Meshuggah was one of my favorite. That New Millennium Cyanide Christ album was great.
Oh wow.
I love the Bleed album was good too, and then one of my favorite bands in high school was Every Time I Die. I don't know if you ever heard that one, but
yep.
They're a little bit R-rated, so we're not going to jump into that one right away. I got a bunch of that era because I used to roadie for my buddy's band, and we do the local circuit and everything. And there was a bunch of kind of that screamy I don't even know what to call it. It was very much metal, but it was real big, early 2000s. Trying to think of like, the Chariot, that kind of.
Yeah, rings a bell. I'm not super familiar though.
Yeah, so all that. What was another one? There was a funny one. I'm terrible with names, but Tony Danza Tap Dance Extravaganza.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting to me, like what's coming to me right now, is just that idea of. It seems to me that that music is different than movies. Like you could almost introduce some of the like more hardcore music to kids. Maybe 11 and 12. You could start getting into some like pretty cool, hard, interesting music. But then when you start talking about like movies and TV shows, it seems like there's a pretty like large quality gap or something. Like a lot of baby stuff is great, but then when you start getting into like early child, that's when I feel like some of that stuff is just incredibly grating. But then there's also just the aspect of like, if you can do it as art, it can be very interesting. Like one of my best friends growing up, their parents would watch like a movie like every Friday night or whatever, and it would be like a good movie, like they were getting like an education in film basically.
Yeah.
And they had a much different approach to just kind of like R-rated stuff. But then again, there was like a house of 3 boys, so there's probably a difference too if it's like, maybe you don't want to show your like little princess like Gladiator or something, but like if you just got like a 12-year-old, a 13-year-old, and a 15-year-old, then like that's probably like a good time.
Yeah,
it's probably different for every family too.
Yeah, I mean, we've all watched all the Lord of the Rings, and even my little daughter, who's 4, she's got 3 brothers, so when she plays tag, she punches the other kid. So it's like, but we've watched all those, and she likes the battle scenes and stuff, and so she's up that. And then as far as shows go, like they like that Bluey show, but you can find some really good kids cartoons out there, like indie stuff. One of our favorites was Sarah and Duck. I don't know if you've ever run into that, but if anybody's got kids, it's available on Amazon. But it's a great, incredibly creative, just the way it works. It's very simple. It's very peaceful. It's very chill. It's about a little English girl and her pet duck, and it's honestly one of the best kids cartoons I've run across. So if you go looking for stuff, there's a lot of people doing some really creative work, but you kind of got to dig for it sometimes.
Right now, my plan is to just bring my kids up on BBC documentaries, so that the only thing that's on screens around them are BBC documentaries, because I just think that it would be great for them to kind of. I think that would just give them an air of like superiority or like culture, really, like worldliness. That would be nice.
Start them out looking down on everybody just a little bit.
Well, also it's like a cheerful disposition, It's like, here's Bert Rumpelskins. He lives under a train station in Burberry Brang.
Yeah,
and we were this like happy dude who goes to the pub every day, and he's like, "Yep, it's a simple life, but it's mine, and I like it." Like I want them to grow up with like hard but like cheerful British influence.
Yeah, we a lot of what we weren't allowed to watch much TV, but one of the few things we was PBS, and it'd be those old British comedy shows, and I still have like British English phrases, and just the way the language works in my head is still very tied into that. So
I grew up with my dad. Just anytime there was a British person on TV being like, "Man, those guys have a way with words."
They do. Yeah. So, well, we probably got to get back to it, but thanks for letting us hop on.
Thank you for joining, and thank you for bringing your progeny in some pretty cool shades. I got to say that's probably, if I had awards to give, you'd get some sort of award for the youngest chiller on a chill stream. So thanks for hanging, Gabriel.
Sure. Can you say bye-bye?
Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.
Well, folks, we stand at a crossroads. If someone else would like to join in, I probably got about 30 more minutes max. If not, and this is the way I'm kind of leaning, we play the beat. And Sherry, if you have something you want to talk about, we could talk about it. But I'm kind of leaning towards ending it. I'm being honest. I'm leaning towards ending it. But Joe, as my you're basically becoming my sidekick, dude. You're basically just like becoming a co-host before our very eyes. And all you had to do was just join and have nothing to say, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, I guess so.
So,
I'm
co-host
surprised
Joe, what do you think? Should we stay on a little longer, or should we play the beat and get out of here?
Well, I'm surprised that Jonathan hasn't hopped on, but he was helping unload groceries, so he might still be tied up. But he maybe he should announce it probably, so maybe I'll wait a little bit. But before the end, remind me.
Exciting news from Dumir, eh?
Yeah, a little bit.
Well, that also might just be a good teaser for tomorrow.
True.
Unless you're saying we should stay on and wait for someone to join us.
It doesn't really matter. If you want to end it, that's cool. And I'll just say that Jonathan got his channel back, and he's gonna post some videos. Probably, I think he's gonna wait a few more days, but not
Sick.
quite sure on that.
We're back, baby. We're back, baby. I need to make some Dumir branding, honestly. Maybe I'll do that this evening. But then again, maybe not. Thanks for hanging, everybody. I'm going to start playing this. I'm going to remove you, Joe. Appreciate you hanging out, buddy. I mean it. You're becoming the co-host.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Okay, cool.
Now it's just me and McMobile. Just like the olden days. Just me and the imaginary friend I've made by splitting myself in two and something. Anyway, let's play this beat. It's a pretty cool beat. It was fun listening to those older videos. But I chose to use the audio from later in our conversation. So we'll hear what this sounds like. Hopefully it sounds good and we like it.
My favorite.
Thanks, everybody.
I don't really have a favorite pseudonym.
I don't either, but I bring it up for a reason.
I don't think I have a favorite pseudonym.
But I think you
Young
get
Hunter
like a lot of
Lunicus.
cool. That's the like John the Clement, basically in English. Right?
I think it's John Climax. That's what I think of every time.
Because there's been all this like other sides of the internet and everything. There's been like issues with anonymity and naming yourself and all this good stuff. And I think Kierkegaard really played around with that by publishing anonymously. And aside from kind of like holding the tension of anxiety, there's very much that other side of things, which is kind of poking at to kind of touch on all sides of the conversation these days, but who knows enough about them?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's people. The thing about the pseudonymousness is I've heard people say that to varying degrees it wasn't like the biggest secret in the world that it was him, right? That especially by the time that the Corsair started making fun of him, they kind of already knew that he had written those books. That being said, it's interesting because I think that Kierkegaard justifies it to himself as wanting people to think for themselves, basically. To not kind of take the I'm going to learn from the great mind above me approach, but to really kind of take ownership and responsibility for themselves thinking through these issues. And one way to do that is to just have it be this person who nobody knows who it is, so it's not this expert that you can just bank your whole life on.
I think he does a little bit more than that. He kind of demands that you put yourself in these positions. That's what I liked so much about Fear and Trembling, which is probably where I would suggest people start with him.
RJ, have you not learned that the proper response to someone asking where they should start with Kierkegaard is assessing them as an individual and depending on the life events that have made them who they are and their particular struggles of being the synthesis of everything.
You know what? We should start with having Sherry read letters of love.
Yeah. I don't really like those that much. Like, I like his, is that the same thing as, Works of Love? Is that what you said? I haven't even finished part 2 of Works of Love. It's incredible. I think it's not my favorite, but I have very thoroughly enjoyed it. I feel it's interesting because it kind of, which this might be an interesting question for you, not being Christian, but like there's this sense of Kierkegaard's very helpful if you're the type of person who's already predisposed to wanting that to be like or if you find yourself you get that kind of remind me, are you practicing Orthodox or are you just kind of like culturally Jewish? I can't remember.
Somewhere in between, my friends.
I see. Yes. I'm remembering.
No, but much more closer to like practicing Orthodox than anything else. But I have a better sense of fashion, but not today.
What are the requirements to like? What would it take to get you in a yarmulke, basically? Or do you wear one already? I've never seen that.
Sometimes I wear a hat, but like usually just actually going to schools.
In the cartoon of you in my mind, you wear a hat like Ash Ketchum. The guy from Pokemon.
Dude, I wear that to the gym so much that it's gross. I'm gonna have to buy it.
Yeah, that's reminded me of I went to an art school and I really loved the gym because it was small and very rarely crowded at the art school, and but yeah, there was like a type of dude who would come in and he was like you could tell he was like from the farm, but he had just like gotten really good at like playing on a computer, and so he was like an animator or something, like a 3D artist or something, but he would just be yoked, but it would be funny because like sometimes they would have like gaming tattoos and stuff. So I remember that being like a type of guy when I was in college, which is pretty cool.
Oh, they're still out there. I would say they're more popular
the nerd
now
jock.
than ever. Yeah.
It's like the nerd jock. Yeah. Those dudes get ladies too. Those dudes get ladies. They're weird ladies, to be fair, but they do get ladies.
That's the whole point about Works of Love.
Well, the primary thing to me about Works of Love is that it actually, Christian love transcends that kind of personal affinity for pretty much every romantic relationship. At least that's the start, right? Like it's kind of a romantic relationship always kind of starts with that kind of preferential one person, you know, and it has so much to do with desire, that it kind of, that desire is like, and Mark Hartwell like this, it's almost like a Buddhist thing where once that desire gets in there, it's almost like we're flirting with things that are deeper than what we understand, because that's, desire is like wrapped up in the fruit of, in the tree being kind of like pleasing to the eye, right? And so there's all of these things going on at that moment that kind of excludes it from being the type of love that Christians want to talk about when they're using it as a divine name, kind of a thing. So like, not to like, well, actually, this is something I'm very interested in, RJ, and maybe you could help me. Like, what do the Jewish people see in Kierkegaard? Like, why is there? And maybe this, I should ask Yosef this too. But like, it's very interesting to me that this kind of like a little extreme Protestant existential philosopher would be interesting to the folks who have the answers, you know?
Well, I appreciate the way you phrased that. Well, I would say it's interesting. I think it's also things I've never heard. But for those who like to read a little bit more about things, I would say it's interesting, off the bat, because the way he treats Abraham as like the primary subject of his delivery. And Abraham, like that very moment that he's
some people can find is pleasurable and kind of leads to why they keep a secret mostly. But so I don't want to like tempt you into talking about something like that gets you in trouble. I'm not 45. I see. So we're both just what you were saying was very great.
So I think in that context that what the person would be doing is they would be acting out of anger about a narrative.
A lot can be said about conviction, not arrogance, but you have to have conviction.
2025, August 22nd to the 24th, in Elmhurst, Illinois. A weekend you won't want to miss, with special guests Cale Zeldin, Paul Vanderklay, Rod Dreher, Elizabeth Oldfield, John Vervaeke, and Jonathan Pajot. Midwestuary 2025, the Fellowship of the Spirit. Stay tuned for more details. Visit us at midwestuary.com for ongoing updates. Midwestuary 2025.
This the blessed hope and the coming of our Savior Jesus Christ.